So we're here. Good to see everyone. Can't see anyone, but that's okay. We are actually going to be putting this live on Facebook as well. I hadn't planned on it, but then I just kind of got the go ahead to do that. It seems like, I mean, we're going to go into this tonight and the degree of how we connect with our guidance in the flow of this time and the nature of this time. But Zoom is always a beautiful tool here because we can see each other's faces. So for the most part, haven't been seeing most of your faces for a little while, which is all good. And now we're here. So I do want to note that we'll probably go about 2 hours. I'm not sure exactly. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to get into. I haven't done one of these in a while. And yeah, we'll see how it unfolds. I have a feeling we're going to be doing another one probably on the Lionsgate August 8th. And, for context, there's a lot of new faces here, it seems, and some faces I've seen before. And then Facebook, it's, there's just, I mean, I'm sure like all of you connecting with a lot of new people right now since we're all online. And, there's just from all walks of life, we're interacting with so many different types of people. For myself as someone who's sharing information like many of you as well, this can present its beauty, of course, and its challenges due to the nature of the context of what we're sharing, which at times can come as a surprise, depending who you are or where you're at. One thing that's important is as we trust in the vibration of things, we recognize that it isn't so much about what we're sharing, it's how we're sharing it and where it's coming from. And for the majority of you here who are of course also sharing things on social media in regards to what resonates with what what you have come to know, or what you've experienced, or what you would like others to potentially experience, these are all these are all great intentions, of course, and the more we purify those intentions of recognizing that really all we can do is share what has been our experience or what we have come to understand or explore or study or research. And the more we're doing this without expectation, then the more easy that ride can be. And that's, of course, if we're in the space where we'd like to share it. And it's also okay not to share. I feel like there's a lot of teachers and teachings out there right now that are very much about everyone needs to be sharing. You need to be sharing your voice, sharing your truth, sharing endless things. And we could say more accurately, the entirety of our life experience is about our expression. But this doesn't necessarily mean sharing, articles on social media, or posting a video, or talking about some conspiracy, or talking about God, or any of these things. There's no image as to what that looks like. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It doesn't have to look like anything in particular. It's likely it may emulate those you resonated with. If you resonated with what we're sharing here, maybe then there's a resonance of sharing in similar ways, or in topics that are of similar nature. But it's to release a lot of the expectation you have on yourself in that regard, but more so really flowing with what feels most natural. And this has been a topic that we've gone into quite often as we dive into topics like human design, as we dive into the nature of what is really going to support us all the time. I've been mindful of using the terminology of these times a lot, mainly because it's kind of an overused idea of that kind of hypes things up a lot. And as much as it is very much a special time, and in reality, we've never experienced this ever before on the planet, and the planet's been here for billions of years, so we could say that it's quite special. At the same time, the reality for all those who have been on this path, there's no surprise as to what's here. It's almost like asking, well, why did it take so long, kind of thing. That's in essence what I know I've come into, and what I know many have. So what I'm really pointing to in simplicity is that the principles that we deliver and go into on the regular are principles in which stand the test of time. And we have to continue to come back within ourselves to what will stand the test of time, what has stand the test of time in our own individual experience. And in relation to those specific things, it's generally things in which are very simple, the things in which are very close to us in regards to the nature of our own expression, like our breath, the sunlight, the earth, our loved ones, what feels most creatively inspiring, even just the objects we own in our home, our food, the things in which really are, in a sense, the most ordinary to us, in so many ways are going to provide the most long-lasting fulfillment. And in times where there's a lot of shiny objects of stories and opinions and ideas and future timelines and endless techniques and modalities to navigate the pain that we're all feeling, we have to be mindful with how our attention may be pulled in varying directions. And so before we really dive into everything, I will really address that piece about pain. I was speaking to a friend just last night or yesterday, I believe, and our discussion really came, we were kind of getting into the details of certain kind of agendas and perspectives in regards to the situation we're in. And we're really speaking of the same thing. And because we're, friends, we could really discuss this without, chopping each other's heads off, which seems very common on the social media scene these days. We were really just able to discuss this in a very mindful way. And it did come to the topic of just pain, where it does seem like the real common denominator within this entirety of the situation, no matter if we are experiencing this individually in a place of ease or we're in the thick of our own mind and dust, if you will, there is a common theme of pain that's arising for us all. Because those who, in a sense, have done the work or have done much of the work over the past, 10, 20, 30 years, you're, in essence, feeling the pains of so many around you. Like there's so much pain everywhere at this point. And we don't need to go far to be able to acknowledge and observe that, whether it's coming in from the outside or coming from within. I mean, it's all really the same thing. So it's pain that is bringing us into a common unifying experience at this time. And like growing pains when we are in our adolescence, this is very much a part of the process. It's very much a part of our journey. And it's to be welcomed. It really is to be welcomed. And the more that we welcome it, the easier the ride will be. And the longer we wait to welcome it, the more difficult things will inevitably get. And of course, I'm, in a sense, speaking to the choir for many of you, but it's something that we, even myself, need an ongoing reminder, especially as things continue to intensify. So this is my initial opening message. Thank you for everyone joining. Say hello in the comments. Maybe I can see some of your faces. Hey, Dan, Anna, Katie, Robert, Sarah, all of you. Lots of you on Facebook too. I did end up putting on Facebook. I wasn't sure because we really are going to get into some good stuff today. But I've really been feeling, just wide open in that regard as to whatever is to come. It's all welcomed, because the reality is I look to continue to share from a very refined place. I haven't shared in a long time in this way due to the nature of the contents of the environment. But at this point, I feel like it's relevant and it's valid to just open it up. Now, as all of you likely already tuned to your own self in this regard, everything that I share has to be taken with a grain of salt, or whatever other grain of item that you'd like to metaphorically represent that with. But what I'm really saying is it has to be always passed through your own resonance, your own heart, your own direct experience, your own research, your own studies. As many of you already know, most of what we're going to dive into on the regular here is things in which are going to stand, the litmus test of your own research. So this is a good thing. And we will get into some direct practices that will be very helpful, as we move forward. And so maybe to begin, we can start with just a brief moment of silence, just to come inwards and connect with ourselves. So we'll just dive into that. You don't need to close your eyes, but you can. You can close the eyes if you like and just bring the attention to the heart. And we'll just feel kind of a washing over relaxation through the body. Maybe you can take a few deep breaths, and we'll rest just simply in the silence of our heart here. We're simply clearing the field, connecting to our higher self, our inner self, our true self, and resting here. So as we feel a sense of initial completion here, then we can slowly bring our attention back. Now you don't have to open your eyes. You can stay there if you like, but you also can. Nice. It's always a nice way to start. I was doing a session. I think Katie actually was there with us too, with my teachers, Ramaji and Ananda, and they did a session similar to this. We'll get into a lot of different stuff today, but they did do a similar like session. And always starting in silence, ending in silence is the place to be, because that was one of the initial questions that was coming to me as I was preparing for tonight and just jotting some notes down. Is the ongoing question that I've posed many times before to myself and in these sessions is, what remains constant within our experience? Like what is it that we always can come back to? And regardless if we identify ourselves as a spiritual person or a seeker, or any of these kind of topics, if we just look at our experience of life, the moments where we've been dutifully very afraid, like in a deep place of fear, or in a place where we were extremely excited about something, all of those experiences generally bottomed out back to just the naturalness of yourself, where inevitably you were disappointed potentially of something that you were really excited about, or maybe you were relieved that the fear didn't come and eat you for lunch or whatever. Right? So we always, whether we are spiritual, we identify as a seeker or not, we always can come back to the reality that we've constantly come back here. And because we've constantly come back here, we have to start giving more attention to what's here, and more attention, endlessly more attention, to the experience of what being here means. Because especially as we begin to navigate topics like we'll get into tonight, and likely what many of you are getting into, and what you're naturally coming into in the waves of social media and everything, presence and being in the home of your heart, the home of your being, the home of your body, which is very much is it opens up the line of communication and connection to your higher self, your guides, your inner guru, master, whatever the term. This is going to be accessed here. And so no matter how adept we become, this is the perpetual reminder, because the levels of manipulation, the levels of mind, the levels of programming that are and have been on this planet for a very long period of time are um, not necessarily increasing in their power, but they are revealing themselves more prominently. So what this means is that just like a pimple coming to the surface, it was always there, but now it seems like really obvious. And so that's why it's more distracting when you look in the mirror, or when someone looks at you and they see it on your forehead, they're like, oh, well, this is very distracting. But it was always there, the gunk of that was always there. So and always meaning like for the period of time that pore, that toxicity is now releasing itself. So when we're dealing with examples that use physicality, it becomes more daunting, but you get the point at least. And so what at least I'm really revealing here is that the time in which we're in, where much of the darkness or the topics of darkness are revealing themselves, because this is a process of the detoxification and purification process. And all of us who are watching this at some degree know this because we've experienced this in our own life. It reminds me of a discussion I had with a client once, a student. We were having this session, and she was really confused and about her experience of why things were getting so difficult. And I had asked her, well, what have you been doing? What have you been practices? And then she explained to me how the day before she did all these practices, and she did like hours of meditation, all this breath work, and she was like really at it. And then a week before she was doing the same thing and all that. And I started laughing. I'm like, well, what's the issue? And she was all confused. She just kind of got like a little irritated. I'm like, well, I mean, you basically are getting exactly what you asked for. You did all this work for purifying, with a purifying intent. You dived into all these things, and now all of it is coming to the surface. And now we're here doing this session, and you're paying me to tell you this. And so, it was just funny. And then, of course, we went into the work to help alleviate that process, because it's not invalidating sessions like this and coming together, because, of course, that's the whole purpose of doing the work, is that then we come together within community or with a teacher or someone we can confide in, so that we can share what's arisen and be confirmed that what's arising is not us going crazy. It's not us having bipolar or all this and that. I mean, that could be a thing, but, in Native cultures, mental illness was not present because there was a different way of perceiving it. And there was a way of uprooting it, or at least looking at it right away. Like nobody's left behind. And in our society, because we have gone through so many instances where things have arisen in our childhood or at times in our life, and nobody was really there to confirm or to be there or to talk to us or to connect with us, then that gets delayed and gets delayed and gets delayed, and inevitably does cause what we label as mental health issues and, awakening crises and Kundalini syndrome and all of these things, because there's a mismanagement of what's happening and what's arising. So this is an initial message to remember that each of us do have a responsibility on our path to be openly sharing, not necessarily always on social media, we're telling everybody, but, people we can confide in, or, what we can trust in, and also being there for others who then will like to do the same. Because it doesn't actually take a master to listen. You don't need to know all the next level stuff about spirituality to just sit and listen to somebody and empathetically be there to hear them without taking on their stuff, which of course can be an issue at times, but we can trust in ourselves to navigate that. But I feel like, just as an initial piece, because so many, especially in our environment, are going through so many challenges, which is one of the core topics I wanted to speak to today. It doesn't mean that it needs to get in the way of, let's say, friendships, family relationships, people that you may really have connected with that are going through a lot of intense opinion pointing and all of this, which really is just a symptom of their own purification. And the more responsibility that we gather through the accumulation of our light, we will have more compassion for what people are going through, and more compassion for the fact that when those are coming to us with all their opinions and judgments and ideas, it's very much a product of a revealing of what's happening within them, not necessarily, like anything to do with the contents of what we're sharing. At the same time, there is a constant mirror effect in regards to when we are facing individuals like this within our reality. It is an opportunity to further refine how we're communicating and how we're showing up, and what is actually relevant to be shared or to be brought to the table. Because compassion is going to be the foundation by which we're all going to navigate the unfolding of the next process. And this is why we always start here, before I start sharing something that someone would deem conspiracy or whatever, because at least now we're developing a sense of trust, that I'm not just trying to shove something down your throat. I'm just simply, revealing what may potentially be the case. This is at least the approach that I have found to be most beneficial. I remember, like I told you guys before, some of you, in 2011, when I showed up at Christmas at my parents' house, and I'm trying to like put on documentaries in the middle of Christmas gathering, and telling them I don't want any parent, well, don't want any parents. I don't want any, gifts or anything, and I don't know. It was quite a mess, but I learned my lesson, and I'm a 3. So for the 3s out there, we learn as we go, kind of thing, right? Nice. So it'd be nice in the comments if anyone just wants to share just how their experience is, how you're feeling right now. I'm going to leave the comments open. You can go into questions, go into things at any point. I may not get into it right away, but I will get to it. I do want to just point out a couple logistical things, because I have your attention and I'm about to get into the goods. So now I have your attention and I can show you these things, just because not everyone may be aware. So first thing is ayp.life is the main website now. It's not Infinite Chic anymore. ayp.life. It has everything. It has all the recent and old articles. Most of these articles, I mean, I could pretty much create a couple books out of the articles I've written. So you could go back and read a lot of these things that are still endlessly relevant and could be supportive in regards to detox, energy healing, navigating relationships, conspiracies, all of the above. The free gifts tab has a bunch of different courses and methods that are all available for everyone to do and dive into, inclusive of human design. The main awareness freedom method, which I've been speaking about often and we'll get into a bit today, of how we're navigating the process of purification in this time. Podcast is not ready yet, at least the new one, but all the old ones are there. All the one-on-one stuff is available. Human design readings are obviously most popular this time, but all of that is there. And then the remedies for those that have been messaging me about like immortality and all the new stuff. I'm skipping the experiences because, there's no in-person things. At least at this time, we're planning some very small group stuff potentially up here, but that will come. So ayp.life is where everything's at. You guys can mark that down. And navigate that when that feels right. So let me see if anyone, I don't think anyone's commenting, it seems. Nope. All right. It was funny. I did a New Earth, shout outs to the New Earth conference. We did a New Earth conference. It's this group in Facebook. And we did a session where I just like laid it down. As I usually do, I like to just build it up and then just manifest her, inform you all. So the host was like, oh, this is the one we've had the least amount of comments, because it feels like everyone was just we're so engaged. So I don't take it personally if nobody's commenting, so don't feel like you need to comment. But naturally, comments are nice. So there is a bunch on Facebook. Feeling practiced and meeting resistance with love. Still the habit of being super centered. Hands up if you want to be super centered. Down. Outside under a tree. Awesome. Okay, so we're lit up. This is good news. Cool. All right. Well, the intention of tonight was I was going to take you on quite a journey of first just resting in what feels most natural and most aligned here. In my immediate reality, at least in this journey of the summer and all of that, just being in nature, being with what feels most natural, most ordinary within my experience, like, sitting with my dog and just watching him for an hour in silence, like, being in the rivers, being outside, taking forever to juice something just to like feel the process. Really coming back to the ordinary has been the most beneficial thing. Personally, COVID and this whole situation hasn't affected my personal life too much other than running physical events, because most of my life has been on an exodus route before this long ago. Not going to restaurants and going out and doing anything really that's considered as normal as most people. Not that I don't do normal things, but it just doesn't happen. And so the last one has been the grocery store, which I spoke about, the whole mask thing, which we'll get into that, and we'll just explore what that means to each of us. But it may not necessarily be the case for you. I mean, some of you have children, some of you have jobs, some of you are, I don't know, traveling or were traveling. So it's going to be infinitely different for each of us. What I hope to accomplish today is that we have a certain clarity as to where we've come, where we are now, and where we're potentially headed. Because I'm not a prophet, but I do have a sense of where I feel things will navigate. And from this place of centeredness, like this, the what was it, super centered, we can keep coming back to what feels most real. So there is a comment here that's quite nice. It's about 5G, I think. Learning about mass, 5G, and other stuff. Yep, awesome. Well, we'll dive into that quite a lot, actually. So, we started with silence, we'll end in silence. It always comes back to these ordinary things. And there was a quote, and it's that I posted recently, and it said, anything that needs force to keep it held up eventually, inevitably will fall, and it inevitably is quite weak, or it is false, it is not true. Because anything with force, anything that needs to be held up with force generally is requiring some level of manipulation, at least outside of the practicality, like if we're holding, I don't know, a piece of wood up. But even that, if we have the right technique, we can hold the piece of wood pretty effortlessly. Just like when we're doing yoga asana, we may initially have a troubled time, but as we actually learn the movements, we can hold postures for very long quite effortlessly because we've recognized the truth of the technique. We've understood the teaching. And so when it comes to, let's say, a human design element, because much of you have done the readings with, or you've done it elsewhere, have you explored it, or maybe you haven't, but this will resonate with you. Human design is just the representation of who we are at the fundamental level, the archetypical and scientific level. So when we come to align with this, we naturally are going to have an easier ride because we're moving at the natural flow of what feels most aligned within ourselves. When we are trying to force things that are not us, trying to be someone we're not, trying to live out someone else's life, trying to live out someone else's truth or opinion or perspective, or doing what someone else has told us to do or forced us to do without it being able to pass through our intuition, which is much, I think, the issue that people are facing with some of the mandates currently. This is going to create resistance. This is going to create difficulty. And that difficulty is simply a product of water trying to go upstream. Like it's just not natural. It's not true. Because we exist within what we call a fallen universe or a fallen planet, these laws, in a sense, can uphold themselves, or they can last longer because the foundation by which the entirety of this aspect of the universe, the aspect of our society, the structure, the matrix in which we exist within, all of which has been fabricated on a false intention. And so by way of creating something with a false intention, they have to, like, in essence, to keep something going that has a false intention, one has to continually act in that way to keep it going. So we could say that, going upstream is very difficult, and we could say in essence is just not natural, but it can be done. It's just going to be extremely painful, and inevitably it's going to end up, you're going to end up dying out. It's like if you were endlessly trying to go upstream, at some point you're going to give up. At some point you're gonna be like, well, this is just not working anymore. And for the most of us, we've had to face that. Like we've already gone through that at a certain point. That could be the dark night of the soul. That could be the midlife crisis. There's endless times in which that will be the case. And in the period we're at now, because the vibration of the planet is heightening ever so incrementally but very fast, the realities of where we may be feeling like we're going upstream are going to continue to present themselves. And so I was just reflecting on an idea recently within myself, because let's say the topics of conspiracy. I mean, that's just a labeled term that diminishes the legitimacy most times about the things that are being shared. But if we just base what we're talking about around fringe topics or topics about things that most are not in the know about the matrix control system, the one world order, and the nature of the false reality that we've inhabited. These topics, I had explored earlier in my path 10 years ago. It was something I really dive into. And so in this period where I've been observing a lot of them, I haven't explored as much of them because they're pretty easy to actually uproot. At a certain point, you could usually tell very quickly what's going on when you have the awareness. But I also noticed slight levels of resistance that I had to people sharing conspiracies that I actually felt were valid. But I recognized that there were just even the most subtle layers of not wanting to explore that again, within my being, because I mean, for me, there was such a sense of ease and peace within my journey day to day over the past few years, etc. So I started to notice that. And then, of course, you start to explore the pendulum of that, where you may start to explore those topics of, whatever. Then you may start to experience a bit of resistance towards those who don't even want to talk about conspiracies because they feel at ease, they feel at peace. And this pendulum, because we exist within this dualistic reality that is constantly being perpetuated, there's these very subtle layers of pendulum that we have to uproot within our experience to continue to come into ease within ourselves. This is very important. And I've released actually a really good journaling exercise. It's on my website. It's called the Awareness Journaling Method. And this one I've found to be very useful because you can do this at the end of your day sometimes or whenever it's relevant, where whatever is coming up in your experience, you are able to really reflect on that and contemplate on that and be very mindful and, in a sense, extremely laser pointer discerning about where within your consciousness and your energy are you feeling any sort of trigger point or emotional charge towards anything, really. Anything that's being shared, any topic, any situation, like you go to the store and they tell you to put your mask on, or you're online and someone's spreading all this love message and you're like, no, I just heard about child pornography, or this, and this is constant, this and that, constant pinging and ponging between things. So because we live in a human body, this is going to be inevitable. We are going to face this no matter how advanced we get on the path and how rooted we are in a non-dual consciousness. There will be these revealings of purification and topics within your field of view that are holding space. And I've used this term often because it's very reflective of what it is. When any topic, person, place, or thing is holding space within your consciousness, within your perception, like something you just can't get out of your mind, you sleep on it, it's still there, whatever. This is calling for your attention. And you don't necessarily need to be very mechanical with this. Like we have to get into the practice. We got to uproot it. We got to figure out where this is from our childhood or whatever. But that may be relevant. The reality is, because of the energies we're in at the planet, where the planet is already in enlightened consciousness. My teachers yesterday were just revealing this, which most of us can feel. But because it's an enlightened consciousness, it's revealing all the darkness. So we're going to be faced with these situations regardless if we go and do a seated meditation practice or not. The beauty of spiritual practice is that it's going to give us the foundation to deal with these arising situations on the virtual world of social media or in our daily life, which is all the same, really, regardless. So, I suggest the practice because it really will. It's more of a proactive approach, but there is a grace in just simply allowing for situations to arise without judgment. A lot of times those who hold heavy amounts of judgment for themselves, they may not be willing to experience that situation in real time because they're afraid of how they may deal with the situation. They may freak out. You may not act spiritual. You may not, I don't know, whatever. So it's important that we're exploring the full spectrum of how the dynamic of our journey unfolds. So again, I would highly suggest going on the website and getting that, exploring that. The simplicity of the practice is just writing out all the things that you're triggered about and then feeling where in the body they are. That's as simple as it gets, because any topic, anything is going to have a place it's going to hold a place in your body somewhere. Because that's a program. It's an energetic charge within your template, within your bioenergetic field that is revealing itself within your holographic reality. And maybe that is a point that we can explore just before we get into more of the I wouldn't say the good stuff, but it's the stuff that always gets the most conversations because it's a part of the world, but we do exist in a holographic reality. So I'm just going to pull up actually a diagram that I've shared before, but you know, there's a lot of new faces, and it's always good to just come back into this. So I'll just share my screen here. Here we go. So this diagram is from a friend of mine, Noel Tobin, who's a a real spiritual scientist, I could say, really on it. And this diagram shows the 15 dimensional matrix, time matrix that we exist in, which is, in a sense, our universe, but it kind of goes beyond that. The three light fields here are what we call the God fields. It's almost it's similar to what we call the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. It's the primal light fields of pure source energy, and then the masculine and feminine energies that manifest from that. It's called the Manu, Mane, and Ire frequencies. But basically what this diagram represents is the downstepping of consciousness. Downstepping means that all of ourselves in this reality, which is in this lower dimensional field of 1 to 3, is a product of the higher dimensional fields. And so the downstepping is holographic, because everything of any lower dimension is a holographic representation of the higher dimension. It's like a fractal. And so whatever we're experiencing within this dimension is a holographic representation of what's in the higher fields. Now, what this diagram doesn't represent, and it isn't another one that he's made, but it basically splits this diagram in two, where on the right side, there is basically what we call the fallen AI God matrix, which goes only up to the 11.5 dimension, because there was a certain happening in our history, in our universal history, called the fall of Lyra. And the fall of Lyra was basically where there was certain actions taken by certain beings and councils of beings that basically removed us from source. It removed us from the original manifestation of our godhood or our angelic lineage. And so that has created a downstepping of consciousness within a fallen AI-ruled matrix, if you will. So that only goes to the 11.5 dimension. So as we come to align ourselves with the truth of our nature, we start to step into and remember the fullness of our multidimensional self. And the process of holographic projection, like for instance, us facing situations in our day-to-day experience where we're having to deal with something is triggering, we're revealing something that's not so fun. This is the process of what we call integration. So holographic projection is the downstepping. Integration is the inward, or we could say the ascension process, the instepping, where we're integrating what has been projected and now revealed within our mirror of consciousness. And that integration is our awakening. That's in essence what we are all unfolding in. So all is self. This 15-dimensional aspect of self within this body is the entirety of the universe, as a whole, and it's just also this individual self. So it is as above, so below type perspective here, where we recognize that everything we are seeing within our individual bubble is co-creating also the collective bubble, but it's all aspect of self. It's all a holographic projection. So on a practical level, what this means is that it's all us. It's all to be taken responsibility for, no matter how painful it is, no matter how not us it may seem. It's to be integrated in the sense of us going back to the simple practice we talked about, resolving the charges of energy that keep us siphoning energy to these, we could call them false gods, false energies, because like false god can be a big term, especially for a newbie, but basically like a false god is anything you deify as something greater than oneself. So that could be as simple as a problem in your life that you think is so insurmountable. In a sense, that's a deification, right? It's a deification of something greater than, and then inevitably there'll be something less than, right? So there's a big problem, so I need to get to the big not problem, and like it's just this kind of endless thing. This is also reflected very much so in the deification of beings, of actual gods or angels or archangels or teachers or celebrities, star status. We're going to get into the magic of that and what that all means and why we're being grounded with that as we reveal what these stars are actually involved in, some of them at least. And then inevitably, if that's the case, then there will be people who are less than, those who have a different opinion, those who are, let's say, less fortunate, those who are sick. There's going to be a separation there. And so the essence of the metaphysics behind everything we're experiencing right now, which seemingly is separating the worlds, it's splitting everyone in division, it's bringing all these different opposing ideas and opinions. This is the source of that wound. It is the egoic separation, which separates everything. In fundamental nature, it separates everything. It separates us from another. It separates ourselves from nature. It separates us from our original true self, our angelic lineage, the source of all. It separates us from our true memory, right? Like if we're speaking of these topics of universal creation and timelines of millions and millions of years, well, we've existed in those timelines, so we likely have memories within these timelines that may be relevant and important to understanding our journey and why we're here today. Separation from the connection to our higher self, our guides, our ability to commune with our inner guidance system, separation from our emotions, separation from our true history, right? Separation from levels of intimacy with those that are around you, like even just your neighbors or people who you have as friends on social media, but now are the greatest enemies because they're whatever. There's a lot of separation. It's separation everywhere. So this, in essence, is the source by which all of the manifested problems, or what we deem as problems, whether we choose that or not, just the situation as a whole that we're collectively facing. It is sourced by this original fall and this original wound. Now, so hopefully this makes sense to most of you. I'm trying to bring it in as clear as possible as we continue to get into the juice of it. Everyone's Facebook's still good. Yeah, okay. So what's coming from this now? So I'm gonna backtrack before I get into just some of the aspects of our history, our universal history, our planetary history, our lineage history, and why that's relevant to understanding what the topic is today. I do want to address just like the topic at hand of the situation we're all facing. So, we're in a bit of a lull, we could say, with this quarantine. It's like, okay, we're coming out of it potentially. The lockdown is being alleviated. The first wave maybe has kind of subsided a little bit. I mean, I guess where I'm in Ottawa, it seemed to increase a little bit again, but whatever. We're in a bit of a lull, and this is actually very opportune time to kind of like get our super center, like come to grips with what is actually occurring, where are we actually at, where would we like to head, and this is that. So we've come from a wave of a situation that's very reminiscent of 9/11, actually. 9/11 was a very similar situation as this because it took the whole world in its arms in those moments. Right? Like I remember in grade 6, we had it on the television and it was like everything was there. And then that was the conversation for quite a while, right? So this is at an nth degree, but we can say that situation was very similar, and it kind of took everyone, in this kind of craze all of a sudden. So for those that are not prepared, of course, it takes in a very emotional place. And so regardless how much you've done the work or journeying, it's likely taken you in some form. And so it's a very humbling experience to come to recognize where we're actually at when these collective situations arise, because this in essence is really just a preparation for kind of where we're headed as things in a sense continue to intensify in the purification, right? In the uprooting, the holographic revealing of, let's say, if we have existed in a fallen universe, that's a big pill to swallow. So all of this coming to the surface is going to be, this is just kind of the beginning. We could kind of put it that way, but it has been happening for a little bit of time. So if we just look at the basic element of the so-called virus, or we can just say COVID. I won't even call it a virus. I'll just say COVID. We're looking at a situation now where Initial claims have placed many different ideas as to what it is. Of course, on the mass scale, it's a virus. It comes from bats. It's from China. It's coming out of a certain place in Wuhan, and it's going everywhere, right? So that's one layer of perspective. Now, in the whole world of what we call conspiracy, naturally, it was very quick that people were revealing the truths about the fact that Wuhan is the 5G capital of the world in regards to the amount of 5G that is in that place and concentrated there. And then the other places in which the outbreak went really intense was also in Italy and in Spain, which are the other two 5G capitals of the world. These are the places in which have the most intense amounts of 5G out of any other place in the world, and were recently turned on in October of 2019 in Wuhan. So in my experience, when I was exploring the initial layers of COVID before it really became really a discussion over here, I was seeing videos of actually people falling over on the street with the sickness, like literally standing on the street and falling over dead. And so there was a lot of questions that are arising there as to, okay, well, what is this? If this is a virus, I'm going to wear a mask. And I was wearing actually a face covering at that point before anything was even talked about, because I was seeing, well, this actually could be something, interesting, right? But as the nature of that exploration really unfolded, firstly, I got the grips of myself, recognizing that firstly, we've in my discussions, we've talked a lot about detoxification for many years now. Detoxification is the revealing that any disease is a product of toxicity. It's not something in it of itself, meaning it's not separate. It's kind of like the medical system, how we've separated like a specialist for the left toe and a specialist for the right finger and a specialist for your forehead and a specialist for your heart and everything. There's this separation of the reality that our body works in conjunction in a holistic faction. And when we recognize that the majority, if not all, disease is just simply a product of toxic waste buildup on many different levels, and can get very complex. I'm not going to oversimplify this, because it does have to do with our genetics and where we've come and all kinds of things. But the basis of detox still comes down to very simple principles. And because I've been in a place where I've observed people heal from the worst of cancers and HIV and all of the above, and personally I've healed some very extreme ailments over the course of my journey in fasting and detox, it became very clear to me over that period that sickness is not something that necessarily comes from the outside. Sickness is a revealing of detoxification. And this is a very difficult pill to swallow. And this is generally what triggers a lot of people, because they're in their own pain. So what I would say to each of you and anyone watching is that this does not validate your experience. It doesn't mean what you're experiencing. Let's say you think you have COVID, you're experiencing the hypoxia and all that, or you have cancer, or you have some ailment that's extremely challenging. It's not saying anything about the fact that that is a valid experience and that you are facing whatever the label says you're facing. But the way to healing may certainly be different than what is being presented within the mainstream. And that's really the core of the message that I have to share, because getting too much in the fact of whether or not there is even a virus, because that is very much a discussion, or that there is just simply a very weak virus, but the symptoms are much stronger due to the nature of other influences within the environment, that's a potential discussion as well. I'm not necessarily going to draw any conclusions on that. People can draw their own conclusions as they do the research. Actually, Dr. Buttar, Rashid Buttar, is someone that I would recommend to go watch. I can link that after. He has a full playlist on his perspective. He was an ex-military doctor who really has shared some beautiful things. But the basis of what's being shared here, firstly, that most people already know, at least in the regard that the disease is not actually that deadly. And so on the basis of just that, we can come to a grounded perspective, firstly within our own fear, because that's first and foremost what's most important. That if we do have fear about getting a virus and dying, that we can at least lessen that fear by coming to the grips with our own logic. That, well, if this isn't as deadly as many other things that we face day in and day out, we come across all kinds of things day in and day out that are potential issues and potential ways in which we could leave. that at least can bring us to a certain grip where we can start to manage ourselves, you know. So that's for those who are in that place. But then for those that have already kind of passed through that and recognize already what I'm speaking about, which is um, you know, there can be things potentially that are past, I guess. You know, I think from the perspective I'm getting, especially as some recent things I've come into, you know, in regards to exomes and this topic, which basically means that the virus we're looking at is very similar to what we would call an exome, which is just a product of toxicity revealing itself and detoxing. You know, so it's similar to when someone goes on a fasting protocol and starts having all these breakouts and all these things start coming out and all this stuff happens and they're going through a healing crisis where they would like to find a diagnosis for that, and then they think they need something to handle that, but this is actually the process of the detoxification. So the beauty is that for many of you who have already been on the path, even if you have gotten COVID, which I feel like potentially some of us have not even known it or whatever, the symptoms of the release are not going to be as extreme because we recognize these principles. There's an understanding that well-being does come from the inside out. And if we take care of what's coming from the inside out in all ways, then we're not going to be in fear of really anything that is going to be presented to us. And this doesn't necessarily mean we don't take our precautions. And I'm not here to talk about that really, other than the precautions that I feel like we all have direct access to within our own being. And really, this is more just a legal disclaimer because I know all the Facebook police are everywhere. But you know, everyone gets what I'm pointing at. That's all. I'll just leave it at that. Now, so where was I? You don't get lost in the Facebook police conversation all the time. Where was I? Okay, so okay, you know, these are topics that I feel like are likely you've come across. You know, 5G topic, the potential that you know, this virus may not even actually be contagious as we think it is, or that they're not spread in the same way. This is a very unpopular topic, and it was just as unpopular as when I learned that all the issues in my body had nothing to do with all the things that I thought they did. They were just a product of my own you know, poor habits and circumstances. You know, it's both, right? Like I had certain situations in my childhood that I could not necessarily blame myself for, but I can take responsibility for. And that's generally what's most threatening for someone who is told that, you know. And it's the reason why the topic of masks and these topics are the most triggering, because the level of responsibility that one would need to have within their own well-being and their livelihood, to be able to have the confidence to say that, well, I can't blame anyone for my well-being. My well-being has to be a part of my own experience. At the same time, we can be mindful of and compassionate to those who may be, let's say, immunocompromised or in certain situations. But again, going into that discussion will continue to reveal more triggers, because the reality of what we're getting at that point is recognizing that death is a part of life. And because death is a part of life, and because that millions and millions of people are dying each day, but all of a sudden the projections and the opinions and all of the intensity of our energy is pointed against those who are pointing out this, you know, in regards to the fact that, well, we're looking at maybe a few hundred deaths a day versus millions that have already been happening. It's just illogical. And we can even stretch it to the point saying that that is psychopathic, the logic behind that perception, which is actually the most compassionate way to look at it, because by revealing the psychopathy within our collective sphere, this is actually what will help us through the healing. And what I'm not saying is going to run around and telling people they're psychopaths, but at the same time, there is a relevance to what that is. And there's more of a relevance to just simply taking that term and exploring that within our own being, you know, as to what about ourselves are we crazy? You know, where within our own being can we further refine the ways in which we're acting and the ways in which we're navigating our moment-to-moment experience. So, you know, all of the situation that in regards to COVID and all of the details of it, I mean, there's endless verticals. I've given you some initial points to explore, because I've really just rested in the middle of it all, because that's not really the topic. The more focus that is placed on the details of this or that within all of the things about virus and all of this and that, whatever, it continues to pull us away from the things we do have control over, right? Which is our ability to naturally boost our immunity. Nobody can argue this. We have the ability to do this. The ability to navigate our own awareness of the delusion and psychopathic nature of the potential programming and agendas that are behind, or at least Trojan horsing with the potential virus, or sickness, or detoxification, awakening. They're all varying terms at just varying levels of perception. We have to bring our attention to it, and that's why we're going into this, and we're going to really round it out coming to the end with all of the layers of what I think is going to be most important in the preparation, moving forward. So we're really in this today. So I'm going to just take a quick break just to check in with everyone, because we're, I wouldn't say we're far from over, but there's quite a lot more we're going to get into. This is why I just build it up for one big workshop, and then we go from there. We choose the universe we inhabit at each moment. We choose how the outside reflection, such as is right now. It's a beautiful piece. That's beautiful. Yeah. Everything is a choice. We do co-create our reality. So this is in essence what we're coming into right now. For those who identify themselves as conscious and aware, whatever, we're coming up against the realities that we do co-create our experience. We are not just the sole creators of reality. That's a false perception. We do co-create. So now we are seeing the co-created reality. And this is why the exploration of the topics in regards to the physical dimension, what we've been brought up in, the system we exist in, are relevant, not necessarily something we need to really get caught up in. They're just relevant because we have co-created that. And for us to co-create what is new, it's like in the book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, we must know the territory, we must know the enemy. Is a very important thing, that has to be acknowledged, because if it's not acknowledged, it's just, there's just a running from it. All right, that's all. And so it's not really anything. It's not conspiracy. It's not Illuminati topics. It's not COVID agenda. It's not anything. It's whatever brings up the triggers and energies within your body. That's what I'm speaking about. So it's not to say you have to go learn. It's just navigate what is revealing that within you already, and see the darkness in that, like the nature of you having to go to the bottom of the barrel, to scrape to be the most efficient, to get all the water out. That would be the kind of metaphor here. So I'm just going to check on Facebook how we're doing. Yeah, we got quite a few here. So no Facebook police yet. We're good. Awesome. So, okay. So we got into some initial pieces in regards to just the situation. We could touch on the topic of masks and all that. I'm not so interested. I saw a beautiful post that I'll share, actually, that was shared up from a nurse, a registered nurse, who kind of shared her perspective on the mask and all that. And it was just it was so beautifully put, because it really represented my perspective. Because initially my perspective with the mask actually was very much in regards to like when a doctor has surgery. It's like, we can't deny the fact that would be important to wear a mask during surgery. So the logic behind that makes a lot of sense. However, the difference in that is that a surgeon is dealing with an opened, heart. You know what I mean? Like an opened body where their spit could literally fall out of their mouth into the body. So it's a very different discussion. And I really recognize the lack of scientific backing behind the mass discussion and all of that, and not something I want to get into, but that post is something I can share that people can explore. I feel most people at this point have a certain awareness as to, what I've shared at least, is that the most important element with it all is us being able to follow our own intuition. And sometimes the path of least resistance is to go with something that may not necessarily match up with this or that, but because we're continually freeing ourselves of ideas, we can go with the path of least resistance. It's kind of like, I don't know, in the detox community, if you believe that fasting is the only thing, or eating fruit is the only way to heal, then everyone who eats meat is the devil. But this is not the case. And it's the same thing with the mask. Even if the mask is a symbol and a ritualistic black magic ritual that is underway, which is the indoctrination of, further illusion and delusion, etc. That doesn't necessarily mean because you wear a mask you're involved in that ritual. It means that you're navigating the reality based on what you feel individually, intuitively in each moment. So it's important to navigate that more importantly than what anyone else says about it. Now, because there's mandates, this is where this doesn't match up with those who do abide by this rule, because even though I was wearing a mask doesn't mean that I agree with the fact that it needs to be forced, specifically forced outdoors or in people's houses. I don't know how in the world people are dealing with that in other places. That is just mind-blowing. But you know, that's it. It's recognizing that when we lose ideas about what things are, when we continue to come into our empty place, we can navigate things moment to moment, not based on preconceived ideas. Right. So this is important. It's not to say that there aren't other agendas and things underway that we surely shouldn't be participating in, but we have to navigate things based on where we're at individually. It's like, well, if you can't get to the grocery store and you need groceries, but you don't want to wear a mask, it's like, well, you know, just go to the grocery store, put the mask on, you know what I mean? Or don't, and deal with what you're going to face when you go there. It's all up to you. It's not really up to me to tell you what that is. It's just, we need to have a bit of common sense, you know, with navigating this process, right? It's important. And so, okay, so we've covered at least the basis of most of the hot topics. There's many more. I mean, there's endless hot topics like Black Lives Matter and like all these different things, the child pedophilia, all of that. I'm not going to put too much time into that, but I am going to just continue to go down into deeper layers. And what I do want to address as a more important kind of breaking point, we could say, or at least a splitting point that I see already underway, what's already been occurring, and what will continue to intensify in its obviousness, is you know, varying things. Because we exist in what we call an AI fallen universe, or AI ruled fallen universe, what this essentially means is that controlling factions that exist within this star system. So controlling factions meaning beings, you know, now we can openly talk about it because CNN and everyone's talking about aliens now, but beings outside of this Earth do exist, for one. And similar to stories like Star Wars and all kinds of things that you know, seem like very big fantasies and all that, you know, the realities of how our universe works in regards to other beings, councils of beings, race lines of beings, other planets, spaceships, all kinds of stuff, is very much a reality. You know, like, I'll just put it flat out. It's very much a reality. It's, you know, it's been since the beginning of time. And for us to, I mean, the ignorance we're seeing within the topics of COVID and all that is very reflective of the ignorance that we've had around this topic. The idea that we do exist in a universe with trillions of stars that have trillions of planets around them, and we are potentially the only you know, race of beings that exist within the infinite universe. It's almost comical. So I'm happy now that the mass media is at least talking about it, because then we could just have, like, you know, like at the barbecue with our parents, it'd be like, come on now. Like, what are we even talking about? So you know, it's just funny. But so when we come back to this, the fall of Lyra and the fall of this universe was very much the splitting from the original angelic race, the original race lines that we are connected to, into hybridized forms of ourselves and hybridized forms of this original consciousness. So this was the breaking away from the original truth, the original beings that govern themselves within eternal infinite source and eternal co-creation, which is of the highest love and light we can think of. The New Age people have nothing on this. It's, you know, it really is the source of all sources. And so the fall of that resulted in many factions breaking away. And this happened over many, many billions of years. But if we come back to just our more recent history, which is still many millions of years, but it's more recent, we're speaking about some core factions of, just put it simply, Anunnaki and Draconian beings that are the core factions in which have basically ruled or have battled for the governing of this planet. Now, there are many other factions that are like insects and gray aliens and humanoid forms, but these are the two main forms that have looked to govern this planet. Now, this is also connected to Mars, and it's also connected to the 10th planet we call Nibiru. But things didn't go so well on those planets in certain forms, and now, you know, they ended up here. And so before much of the control on this specific planet happened, we had what we call the basically the angelic Orifeme races, the original angelic human 12-strand DNA Orifeme race lines. These angelic race lines were the beings in which what's actually depicted, I talked about, it's actually depicted because Antarctica is off limits, and the information and study that connects with these original race lines is connected to a book called The Voyagers 2, and it's connected to many other things, but the book is called Voyagers 2, and it speaks of this original race line 575 million years ago that inhabited itself around Antarctica, and this was before Atlantis and all these other timelines. And this was depicted in the movie Transformers, because in Transformers, the beginning, one of the movies, I forget which one, but in the beginning of the movie, I believe they found, you know, the evil dude or whatever, he was under the ice in Antarctica. And that was very symbolic for me when I watched that, because it was very reflective of what happened there and many things. But aside from that, there was a fall again that happened from this angelic race line that broke off, and further control basically influenced the entire planet. So I can't get into all the history. It's way too much, and I'm not the best expert on it, actually. The book is way better, and, you know, there's many other people. I'll continue to share more of it over time in coming times, but I just wanted to outline that because having an understanding of the true Earth history helps us understand where we're at now. It's actually very important, because the majority of the time, why people don't understand the validity of certain conspiracies is because they have no recollection or awareness as to where they've actually come from, or where our society has actually come from. Even if we are just to look at the planetary dimension, you know, in regards to controlling banking measures that date back to Rome, date back to Babylon, date back to the fall of Lemuria and Atlantis, which were original civilizations. All of these downstepping, or these, you know, basically rise and falls of civilizations, also Egypt in most recent time. Well, it wasn't so recent, but, you know, you get the point. These were all periods where there were further, basically it was the same pattern repeating itself over and over. It was an initial loving, feminine-based civilization that inevitably was usurped and distorted and manipulated by overpowering masculine-dominated energies or beings. And then as that was pushed too far out of balance, there was complete destruction. There was the fall. There was the flood, like in the Bible. There was many things that had occurred that continued to just basically represent the same repeating pattern, the same issue. So we're in a time now where that issue basically can't happen anymore. You know, there's no option. But we can see where this has occurred: the raping of plants and animals, the raping of children, the raping of the entire system of how we exist in this kind of vampiric way. Even our monetary system, it's very vampiric. If we are to get someone else has to have less. This is the only way that this system exists. So all of this is coming from this same place, and it's very much connected to these original controlling factions. Now, again, there's so many details to this. I could go on like literally like 10 hours, but we're not going to have that much time. What I do want to point out is that the agendas that we're seeing played out presently in this year, especially in 2020, and then what will be in 2021 most likely, is in a sense the kind of peak of like quite a long period of time. We're talking like, yeah, like a very long period of time. So the recycling of these topics, the recycling of past things in history is going to be very relevant. So a really practical practice, because I'm getting into a lot of stuff, so I want to zone it back to a practice that you guys can implement. There's a practice that is called what I call memory recall, or karma recall, it's called. And it's a practice that's similar to the journaling exercise that I've given, but it's basically where you would, at night, before you go to bed, you would meditate upon all the memories of your day. You would go back into each memory that you've had throughout your day, and you'd basically reimagine it as if it was in its most aligned sense. Sometimes you don't even need to, especially all you aligned folk over here, you know, you don't even need to, but just the awareness of it naturally will navigate likely a new direction of how you, like what you need to feel within that situation, because there may have been unresolved or lingering feelings that didn't get resolved in that situation. So this is quite a beautiful practice, and you could just do it a couple times. It's nice to do it before bedtime, because then sometimes during your dreams, you will actually reveal deeper memories that have to do with potential other lifetimes or other periods in your experience that are quite relevant and helpful for you in your healing. So it's a very simple practice, but it's very important because having an understanding of your memory, the lineage of where you've come from, what you've done in the past, whatever, it's not absolutely necessary, but it can be relevant, right? So we'll just rest right in the middle there. You don't have to go figure out where you've been, what you've done, and all the timelines. In my experience, it's just more fun. So, like you can kind of put it that way. If it's causing more stress, then don't do it. If you're getting caught up in things, we don't need to read too much into it. Similar, like we don't want to read too much into synchronicities, especially in the periods now, because we understand synchronicity can be manipulated. It can be manipulated by just the nature of the ego, by thinking something is that when it's this, thinking something is this when it's that. That's one side. We also remember we exist in a multidimensional experience, and we're still in a sense, a fallen universe. Though we are existing in kind of, I've talked about this before, we are existing in a quarantine, which means that we are protected within this side of the universe because there's just certain energetics that have happened that have allowed that to occur. So there is a quarantine, and we're much more protected than we've ever have been, but there's still high level amounts of influence and distortion that may be coming in our field. I'm going to do a workshop on this later. I do this one-on-one with people on how we can navigate our awareness with influence, but it's the same as what I've been talking about, the journaling, the tuning in, feeling what's coming up within your aura, within your body, what feels unnatural, maybe when you have thoughts that just come out of nowhere. A lot of times they may be sexual of nature, they may be violent, they may be weird. That's when there's influence, so these are all ways in which we can kind of start to bring awareness to the fact that, like for instance, with synchronicity, it can be directed in both ways. So we have to be balanced in just how we're observing things. So we're just not reading into anything too much. That's all I'm really, kind of pointing at. And, in regards to the entirety of what we're experiencing right now, not reading into things is going to be the most valuable of our journey, because it keeps us balanced with just what's being presented at face value. Like the example I gave today in my post was in regards to, like, let's say Black Lives Matter. If we don't get caught up in all of the topics about it, we just recognize, well, yeah, racism is not aligned. It's as simple as that. Racism is not aligned. It's misaligned from true source. So what in my immediate reality and environment can I do? Can I act upon? Can I bring consciousness to, compassion to, that can help heal that, help transmute that, help bring balance to that? I don't need to get caught up in all the details of this or that, because as we can see, it just in so many ways creates so much division and so much other things that move us away from the practicalities of what is real, which is just taking it at face value. Oh, people are mad about racism. That makes a lot of sense. It's like it's not like some big confusing thing, right? So the simplification is really where it's at. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's important. So again, I'm going to check in, see what's up with everyone, because I know I'm just, really getting into it here. Okay. Not too much. I just want to keep going because I'm a manifestor. I'm just going to tell all you that I'm going to continue to go. We're gonna just focus on, and it's funny. People don't know human design. They think when I say I'm a manifestor, it's like some new age like identity. Well, I guess it is in a sense, but it's like, oh, he's a manifestor. I'm a manifestor too. It's like, so we, just for those who don't know, we're just talking about the aura type within human design. Each of you will have one, and you can go get your chart if you don't have one. And free gifts on the website, ayp.life, that would be all there. Okay, so before we get into like the core of really what we can really continue to do, I mean, I'm splicing it all in here. We've talked about the awareness journaling method. We've talked about the importance of memory recall and continuing to not, what we're getting at with the memory recall is recognizing we don't want to be moving forward into the next day, leaving things lingering. I mean, that's always the case. We don't want to be doing that. But in a time where things are, every day is like a new universe, it's importantly recognizing that we're taking care of our like Sunday's universe, and then we're going into Monday's universe. You know what I mean? Oh shit, it's funny. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with that. Now, coming back to the controlling nature of the factions, the way in which let's just look at the end game. Let's look at, you know, like what's in the Bible. I'll just read this verse from Revelations, King James Version. Revelation 13, 16, 17, well, just the verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in the forehead. 17. And no man might buy or sell, save that he had that mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So, of course, they use the most epic of languages, but basically what they're pointing at is, basically what this is pointing to is really what we can call the transhumanism agenda, or the fulfillment of AI God reality. So this is a really important topic because it's going to continue to point us to the importance of nature and organic life. So, for instance, we're on social media. I'm on social media a lot more than I ever have been right now. Well, it's been in waves. Initially, it was like that, and then I realized, holy shit, this is intense. Where you all, in a sense, you almost feel like you're existing within social media as another fraction of yourself, which can be quite frightening. And in a certain sense, the layers of that can get really intricate, because what that is a stepping stone to is inevitably what we're seeing with things like Elon Musk's Neuralink, like putting wires into the brain, which will connect you to a wire, like a web of consciousness. In other words, 5G, or the Internet of Things, where your consciousness, in a sense, will be hooked up and connect into the synthetic web, or the synthetic matrix. So we have to uproot this now, which anyone who's awakening in any regard will be seeing this. But it's important to continue to be mindfully aware of where there is these layers of yourself that you feel are getting caught up within, you know, the addictions of social media or technology, or, you know, varying things like that. That'll be where the balance begins to lie, because the boundary and the balance, as related in this Bible verse, is the skin. The skin is the doorway inward. The skin is the breaking point. So when we break the skin, this is the boundary, and this is where things begin to shift. And so the times we're in, we're basically on the precipice of what likely will be the biggest craze, of the next technological revolution, which is firstly 5G and Internet of Things, which is as simple as, okay, I'm sitting here and I want to go to the store. So I say, hey, I want to go to the grocery store. So Uber is already on its way. Now Uber arrives at my door. I get out of the car. I go into Uber. I get in the car. I tell Uber, the self-driven Uber car, where that effect, it already knows, firstly, that I'm going to Whole Foods, I guess. Probably supplied me with a mask. So now I got to put the mask on. Now I'm on my way to Uber, and I forget my grocery list. So all I need to say is, hey, I forgot my grocery list. What do I need for groceries? Now my computerized fridge that's connected with like Alexa or Siri or whatever, then tells me, oh, you need this, this, and that. You need your apples, you need your mangoes, and you need your watermelon. That's pretty much what I'm getting most of the time. Well, not apples too much, but maybe I need them. So that's the reality of 5G. It's not internet, like faster internet. It's the reality where we exist within the internet. So on a surface layer, we could say, oh, that's really cool. That'd actually be quite fun to exist within such an effortless world. The issue is that if those who have instilled that system are of psychopathic nature, or it is with psychopathic intent, which is the fulfillment of transhumanism, AI God technology, then this is where the limit is drawn. And this is why we're at, in a sense, the crossroads, because we're not denying the validity of technology, where as we advance, we exist in the most advanced of civilizations, as were the Egyptian, the Lemurian, the Atlantic, the so-called Antarctica races. They were the most advanced of civilizations with the most advanced of technology. The difference is that this is in a sense, a decentralized organic technology that is governed by the consciousness of truth, the consciousness of people, the consciousness of council. So this is what we are facing now. And this is why there's such an uproar with all of this, because we can say that, yeah, we live in great homes, there's skyscrapers, we have spaceships, so all of this. However, when we get to the bottom of where these things have been initiated from, or the intentions that they carry, they have been false from the beginning. So it's not that they can't, it's not that everything needs to collapse like an apocalypse so that we move into what is true. It's that we have to uproot this intention. And this is really just coming back to our own power of our own being and in our own individual reality as to what has been our intention within all our moments, within all our creations, within all our relationships. What is the intention that we have carried? Has this relationship, has this with this person, place, or thing, this business, this opportunity, this way of being, this habit, is it sourced on a true, valid, authentic intention? An intention that does represent what the world that we do desire to create. You know, if we do desire to create a new world, what would that look like? And what does that feel like, most importantly? And generally that's going to feel like a real deep place of ease, coming back to the natural essence of your being. You know, these are layers to what this is. So, you know, so this is a very important like practice here, because the realities of us understanding that the external reality is going to change by the product of what we are individually intending. You know, this is, I mean, we all, I feel, are coming to this, but it's constantly reiterated, especially as things intensify. Like, for instance, a vaccine that may or may not, let's say, have certain things in it that further this agenda, further the revealing of what I'm speaking about in regards to AI God technology, or the fulfillment of a transhumanism agenda. So why would this be the case, or what does this even mean in regards to our journey? Well, the basis of transhumanism and the basis of why that would be the end game for any being who basically views this as cattle, because we have to understand this. This is how we can come to healing with the whole reality of how you know, evil the so-called plan is recognizing that just like some people view cattle or an ant, is how certain factions of beings view humanity. So you can't really have a grudge against them because there's nothing really to say to that. It's like, well, that's just the perception. There's a complete disconnection from source. So that's all they will understand. They will understand the feeding and a vampiric nature of themselves. That's what they'll understand. So the reality that is to be created will further that. And so for beings that are coming from this place, there is deep amounts of fear of an awakened angelic human, because the one fully awakened angelic human completely transforms the entire planet. That was the nature of Joshua Sananda 12, which is, you know, what we call Jesus Christ. He was the embodiment of avatar nature, and avatar nature is, I mean, when you're a realized avatar, I mean, you're everybody. You know what I mean? It's a really interesting thing. So, which is a whole other discussion. But what I'm getting at is that one being is extremely powerful, and so the nature of how the collective reality is kept in third dimensional matrix living, or in other words, in the prison of a transhumanist world, is basically by beings using the technology that we are. You know, we are we are made in the image of God. We are the manifestation of the highest order. So everything about ourselves is what is reflected within technology. Everything we experience, the phones, the computers, the cars, everything, this is all a reflection of the technology that the awakened angelic human is. And so transhumanist agenda is basically reversing that, and it's re-engineering synthetic creation based on the organic laws of nature and based on the angelic human. So creating a synthetic version of ourselves, like a robot would be a good example. But this is done in more like in very subtle ways, right? So just the internet and our phones is an initial layer. Artificial and augmented reality is another layer. Getting something implanted would be the next very breaking point. That's the breaking point layer. You know, like that's where it really can get, it is dangerous. It is something that I would highly recommend not doing. And I would highly recommend exploring the nature of what potentially is in the vaccines. I will just say it actually outright. The nature of what we're looking at, which is likely in the vaccines, are microchip orientation, which basically means that the vaccine is more so an agenda of a tracking-based mechanism than it is any sort of support in basically protecting us from some virus. This is something that is pretty out in the open right now. If we look into something like ID20 or Agenda 21, even when we look at the nature of the current lockdown, we're looking at actually the exact replica of a document that came out, I think it was in 2010, which was actually a release document by the Rothschilds, which basically outlined how to properly quarantine and lock down. And it was all of the steps that have been underway currently and further steps that will come. So, yeah, I mean, I'll just like put myself out there in that regard regarding the vaccine. I would say that if there's anything that I really would say don't do, it'd be don't get a vaccine. And I don't say too many things often. Will I say will it be the end of your world if you do? No, because nothing is. Will it make things probably extremely difficult in coming times? Yes, that's highly a potential. And so that's something to kind of dive into. I will provide other resources and things so you can explore that. But basically what we're getting at, coming back into the transhumanism aspect, is that the majority of the population will not be willingly open to getting microchipped or getting anything in their body. And so that's why it was very clearly stated in the Bible that this was going to be the case at a certain point. And to be honest, this is not just like you're microchipped and it's black or white. There are other areas of our experience in this life and in the manipulation of our reality where this may already actually be the case, because the size of these microchips are so small. I mean, they're like as small as an atom sometimes. You know, like they're involved in the elementals of our world. They've been coming at us in so many different ways. So it's just being taken to a much more, it's just being taken to the nth degree in coming times. So that would be something that I would surely explore and do your own research on, and just come to grips with about what are we really saying when we say transhumanism, or what are we really saying when we look at the topic of an AI God or an AI reality. What we're really looking at is the complete disconnection from source, the complete because already are we manipulated on many different layers. Whether doesn't matter how awakened we are or not, our physical body and what we're experiencing here is heavily manipulated everywhere we go. As we become more aware and as we pull back our attention and our awareness, because our attention is the currency, as we bring our attention to what is most valuable and most alive for our being and most loving, we are naturally uprooting where those subconscious programs have been instilled. And that's part of furthering the reveal of these implanted programs and ideas and habits that may still be governing one who views themselves as awake. You could view yourself as awake, but still have things that are going on, because there's so many layers to that programming that have occurred not just in this lifetime, but many, previous lifetimes. It's funny. I'm on the fringe of a lot of these topics, but we're just going in on them regardless, because it's just the time to do so. So what I'm really getting at with that is recognizing where we place our attention is going to be important. But because we co-create in this world and we're in this reality, we're being bombarded with a lot of different things, even unknowingly. And we're going to explore a couple of those and how we can further kind of like set ourselves up with that, right? To round out the topic on the AI kind of God perspective, I just want to point to something that will, I don't know, maybe it'll kind of light bulb some things. Oh, someone's posting something here. Oh, Lockstep. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. Oh, it's Rockefellers. Perfect. So the document by the Rockefellers is called Lockstep. It's in the comments in the Zoom. That's the document that I was speaking about. Perfect. Thanks, Karine. So I'm just going to share this. Some of these pictures are kind of disturbing, but I will share just this photo. So this photo is from a movie called Ghost in the Shell. I remember watching this, and quite a powerful movie because it actually very much depicts the transhumanism agenda. And the majority of movies these days, and also in the music industry, like holographic projections of certain artists, or even autotune. Autotune is a certain degree of transhumanism energy there. It's like we don't need to get black or white. Things can still be fun, but again, the line is drawn when things start entering the body, and the reality is that things enter the body in other ways than just physical. So when we're watching something, things are entering the body. That could be entities, that could be programs, ideas, consciousness, all that. So as long as we're aware of it, then we can protect ourselves. But if we're not aware, then we can't. Now, this picture is from a certain it's basically I think one of the ending scenes, or close to the ending scenes, where she basically becomes the AI god. That's pretty much what happens. The whole movie is about transhumanism and implanting things, and she's a robot anyways, and all that. And so this AI god energy is represented as black goo. It's in a lot of movies. This black goo is basically it's an organic um, it's an organic consciousness that is the source of where AI God technology will get its, in a sense, its fuel from. Now, there's a video that I found actually just today. Where is it? Oh boy. Of course, there we go. Okay, so there's a video. It's called "Why is Hollywood Obsessed with Black Goo?" I'll link this for everyone because this video is actually quite reflective. I'm not going to play it because we've been going quite a while, and you guys can just go into it. But basically, in this clip I was going to show you at 317, he basically describes where this originated from in Atlantis, where it was basically created through black magic. That was a process of bringing consciousness into synthetic form. And this inevitably actually then was used within a lot of religious structures, physical structures like the Kaaba, like certain places in Rome. And this energy basically siphons energy like a vampiric consciousness. And the more energy we give it, the more energy it has. This is also depicted in another movie. I forget what it was, but it was basically a guy trying to create this. He created this like false god energy, and then it basically started taking over. And it was just, again, more programming, more potential conscious programming of what could be the potential if we were to allow that timeline to occur, which it won't. But that's in a sense what the trajectory is. Someone's asking, how can I have so many tabs open and my computer still work? Well, I'll tell you, this is actually not too many. So we're doing pretty good here. So, but thank you for the concern. So yeah, so so that video basically just outlined how this originated in Atlantis. It was basically black magic gone wrong. I mean, most black magic goes wrong anyways, but it's just the creation of this false synthetic consciousness that then becomes a half organic, half synthetic energy, and it's the basis in so many ways of it's not the basis of what's to come. It's the basis of what is actually fueling what is happening now. So again, if we are to just consider for a moment that this black goo is actually what's being siphoned by certain religious structures, specifically Rome, and in the Kaaba, in like the black cube, which the black cube is represented as a metaphor and a symbology within many different structures around the globe that is said to have this energy, or this black goo within it. So the amount of prayer and energy that's going to and siphoned towards this power, ultimately this is why the power is there. And I guess this maybe potentially leads us to another trendy topic in regards to the revealing of human trafficking, child pedophilia, and then going much deeper, like ritual abuse, spirit cooking, and all of that. All of these topics are, in a sense, we could say that the way in which, well, the highest of evil is to harm a child. Let's just put it this way. The highest of evil is to harm a child. That would be the greatest of any sin that anyone could commit. So in regards to a reversal of energy, or a black magic type of perspective, the reversal of that is going to be sourced from the highest of so-called evil, or the highest of those types of practices, and that would be sourced within the manipulation, harming, abuse, murder, etc. of children. And so the entirety of the system that's currently falling apart, and why this topic is being revealed in this year at this time on a mass scale, is because the system that we have come to know is based upon the reversed mechanics of that energy. It is based upon the creation of like what that is, right? It's these rituals that have occurred for a very long time, which include many different things: child sacrifice, spirit cooking, which is high levels amounts of torture to basically remove the spirit and then feed on the spirit. There's many different levels to that. All of that is going to be the source to the energy of beings who govern this reality and govern the systems in which we've come to know, which are specific religions. They are the varying, I mean, everything. It comes back, in the core, it comes back to money, because the monetary system is based on this energy, and everything we exist within when it comes to money. Of course, we can transmute all of this, which I'm going to get into. Everything I'm speaking about now can be transmuted and used in a more beneficial way. However, the basis of where it has come from, or the way it's been controlled more specifically, is coming from the manipulation of these energies. And so just, as an overall element there, we recognize that the deepest of wounds and the darkest of magic that occurs on this planet is being revealed now, because we are ready and because the system is already falling apart. It's like the pimple coming to the surface. The mother, Gaia, is pushing everything to the surface. It's taking what's at the deepest level of the darkness of this planet that has been here for millions of years and bringing it to the surface to be revealed. That's in essence what what we're looking at. So that's probably the darkest topic we could speak about. It's the juiciest of them all. In that regard, we're not going to pay too much attention to it. I speak to it because we're mature enough now that we can, and we're mature enough now that it's not even the times are mature enough that we have to. It's not much of a choice. It's going to have to be brought to the surface. And for me, this was actually the initial part of my journey. So it was far more challenging because I didn't know how to deal with going into those things. But naturally, I was guided, and all of you are guided, so that you aren't getting caught up, within these energies, within these topics, and getting, it's like seeing like an animal abuse video or something, and you're like, oh, come on, like it's extremely challenging. And so we have to feel those pains. And there's likely a lot more worse videos that are going to be shared in coming times. I'll just say that much. And so you may come across them. So it's recognizing that the same practice is applied, and sometimes bearing witness to that is a part of the journey. It's not necessarily to be looked for, or avoided. Right? Just like any of these topics, it's not something to necessarily look for or avoid. If it's arising here and I'm here now sharing it with you, then it may or may not be time, like to see what that is. So I just want to go check Facebook, because, we're getting to the core of this. So this is when, maybe the Facebook will be taking it down. I don't know. Hopefully not. No, we're still up. The risk I've taken, I'm going to actually start recording now on Zoom because I did not record the initial Zoom. So I'm going to make sure to go get that Facebook video like ASAP, once it is, once we're done, because who knows what will happen. But we're still here. So we're all good. How's everyone feeling? What time is it? Boy, we're almost coming up on the 2 hours. All right. I had a feeling we were probably going to do a 2-part thing, but just let me know how you're feeling, if this is helpful to you in any way. I haven't shared on these topics in a long time. I've known about them for a long time, but I just pointed at other things because I feel like it's a greater foundation to have when you're, there's a certain centeredness and availability to navigate these types of topics. But in a time where they're going to come up anyways, I might as well just kind of put it down. Epic, nice. See you guys over there. Anna, Sarah, all of you. It's great to be here. Yeah, what's happening on Facebook? I just want to check. Facebook is Facebook is expanding into consciousness. Oh, yes. That's exactly what it is. If you're on Facebook and you want to share this, this would be a great time because we just passed through, I think, the peak. So, you know, we're going to still be at the peak a bit, but won't be as like, I don't know, like I could just imagine someone just like, oh, I just want to like have a nice meditation with Corey, and then start talking about all this stuff. I just laugh sometimes when I think of like family or old friends, you know. And funny enough, they're still sticking it out. So this is good. So someone asks, are we headed in the right direction? Will we be okay? So I will say this is very much an individual question. I will say that if you're able to handle keeping on this call to this point, you know, you're doing all right for yourself. You know, that's what I'll say. You know, we have to understand that it takes a certain maturity, a certain awareness, a certain availability to be able to just be open to what's being shared here, you know, and to be open to what's being explored. So you know, that's a good on all of you to be, you know, to be here, and I really expect nothing less. You know, if you're here, you're available, you're ready, and you're on it. So this is something that's important to reiterate. Now, what I will say is that what we covered originally about the fall of this matrix universe, which again, you can go into deeper into Kaylonic Science Wisdom, Voyagers 2, that was a good book, very deep book, very long book, but if you want to, you can go in. We speak about the fall of Lyra from the 11.5 dimension. So if this is speaking to anything, it's speaking that you're never out of the water. You know, like you're not, there's no place where you're just good. You're like, oh, I'm just coasting now, you know. The good news, though, is that we are in a time period where in a sense that can be true, because there is so much supportive energy in the planet. There's so much supportive energy from the earth and from the universe that we have to be vigilant. We have to be discerning. We have to continue to do our work always. But we're really riding the wave right now. And the more, and again, it is the reality that you deem it to be. So this is what it is. You know, we have to if we're doing our authentic seeking, our authentic inquiry, our authentic contemplation and work, we will continue to come to recognize that we are the steerer of that ship, where not everyone is going to necessarily make it in the way that we think is making it or whatever. Not everyone has the same path. Not everyone is even considering any of this, or even willing to consider, or even in their journey to consider, because they may be an empty shell, because there is something as an empty shell, a human that doesn't have a soul, or a being that has already chosen the darkness, which will just go off and that kind of thing. There's a reality to that. It's like in the Matrix, all the Agent Smiths, you know, the Agent Smiths come out of nowhere. That's another representation of synthetic consciousness, you know, beings that in a sense are unreal. So we just have to stay rooted within ourselves. I will say it does very much feel, at least from my experience, I mean, this is all really beautiful coming to the surface. I mean, I'm so blessed to be here sharing this. I'm so blessed to be existing, to be breathing, to be living, to be with my dog Neo, you know, like I feel blessed each moment, and I continue to experience my own process as well, and to be vigilant and aligned in my own right. So we each have to take responsibility of that. But you know, there is a lot of, there's a good draft, we could say, you know. there's a good draft taking us, you know, wherever we're meant to go. I mean, that's kind of the way we need to kind of look at it. But it's promising. But at the same time, I wasn't so much here to kind of like blow the smoke in everyone's butt. I'm here to really, you know, ground us into the realities of the potential challenging times that we may continue to face. Now, if we continue to come back to the practices that we've outlined and the practices that you are all naturally resonant with, you're going to continue to ride that wave with ease. There isn't going to be a desire to escape the reality that's arising or the challenges that are present individually or collectively or anything in between. There's a continued openness to explore, be curious, you know, like, what is this? What is arising? What is here? And what does this have to do with me? That's really what it comes down to, you know, like, what does this have to do with me in my own individual life? And as long as that is the the lens we're moving with, we're going to continue to be given more and more gifts of understanding, gifts of awareness, gifts of prophetic potential, like how do we navigate our journey, and where are we best set up? How are we best set up to continue to deal with things? And also a grounding within the physical reality, because although there is a lot of light on the planet, there's a quarantine, like energetic quarantine, which basically means that darker factions are being dismantled. There's been enough work so that the specific stargates and energetic points on the planet have been protected. They've been healed in certain ways, so that there's a lot of, again, good drafting. However, this doesn't mean that there won't be further challenges or attempts by ruling factions and beings that don't have the most beautiful intent in store. It doesn't mean that at all. So we have to rest right in the middle with that, and just have some common sense. That's, like I'm saying, common sense is probably one of the most important principles, in this unfolding navigation. So where are we at? I've gone into basically the core of the root of the juice here, which is, where is all of this agenda stuff stemming from? It's stemming from the disconnection of self. It's stemming from AI consciousness, that is very present in our everyday moment reality that we have to be uprooting. Now, we did touch on the monetary system. I'm not going to get into this too much. Just like, we covered enough of it, I feel, at least for this session, in regards to the fact that it is based on black magic. It's based on siphoning of energy from the highest of evil, if you will. It is sourced from that, and it's based on a hierarchical consciousness where the few have much and the many have few, and this perpetuates itself. Now, coming into abundance consciousness will, in the timeline we're in, still mean that we can come into money, or we can come into resource, or more importantly, we can come into the resource that will help us navigate the situation individually and uniquely for the best for us, so that may be any amount of money or inflow or outflow or whatever. But coming into abundance consciousness in regards to where we're living now and how we can navigate now is actually very important, because being able to navigate the physical reality with our resources is going to just simply help things become more effortless. Now, if you're doing your work to continue to allow for the purification of yourself be revealed, many things can come with that. On one level, you recognize firstly how little you really need, because the more purified we are, the more connected we are with nature, which endlessly provides, like originally from the breath, the water, the sunlight, and the ground of the earth, then the food, and then the herbs, and then animals and other people and all the things that we can interact with. So there's so much abundance just there, and all of that is free. So that kind of sometimes handles the money conversation a lot. However, we're still in between worlds. Obviously, we're reliant within a system where we get our energy. We go to the grocery store. We have gas for our car, whatever. So there's a reality to the necessity of these things. But the more authentic we're becoming in regards to our desire with money, the more balanced we become with how we navigate it. Because it isn't really so much the topic of money as it is the intention we have with what we're doing with this money, how we're navigating these resources, which also extend into the networks that we carry at this time. Who are we networked with? What is our physical environment looking like? Like, it's likely a large exodus is going to occur from cities over the coming years, which has already occurred, due to the nature of beings wanting more freedom, being off-grid, being sovereign, these layers. All of that is going to be relevant and more relevant, and having money or having access to resource, or having, at least most importantly, a flow, a balanced flow with the nature of resources. This is something to bring awareness to always, but it's something in this time you may find yourself getting more, I know, especially with myself, direct with yourself, more detailed with how you're looking to navigate that, how you're looking to set yourself up in certain ways. So that, on a basic level, the removal from yourself in a system where you have to work to survive, or you have your job, or you have your business where it's almost like your prison, where you just do that for the survival nature. That's one element that naturally will continue to shift, because the nature of living and merging your life with your work, and your work with your life, and the money flow with your rest flow, and the rest flow with your money flow, all as one. um, this is the intention that we can carry. If there's something that we're offering here now, it's the intention that we can merge the worlds of this, so that we're not feeling the dissonance with the topic of money, especially if as we uproot what we can now unsee, which is the basis of where money comes from, and how it is the core of the instilling control system and manipulation tool within the collective at this time. This is something we can at least set our intentions with. And then from there, we will be very prepared to navigate topics like potential use of, let's say, cryptocurrencies, the investment in cryptocurrencies, the investment in gift circles or barter circles, the investment in networks and sharing circles that don't require the exchange of money. These are all going to be more and more relevant in coming times. But money is still relevant, and it's not to be ignored, because the more you ignore that, the less you're going to be able to navigate the sharing barter system, because you won't be able to understand the dynamic of giving something without expecting in return, right? So it's coming back to our nature within the system we already exist within, and navigating that in a kind of a gray area. It's not black or white, right? So this is important, because the debt-based system will continue for some period of time, but inevitably the consciousness, just like everyone's seeing, like, oh, well, UFOs do exist in the trillions of stars that we inhabit. We could also say that the fact that the whole planet is in like $100 trillion of debt, or whatever the number is, it's like, well, maybe we're in debt to the aliens. I don't know. Maybe that will be the conclusion that we end up having. Oh boy. So yeah, it's like it's quite the topic, but it's the topic that inevitably, when we come to our grips and come to our logic, we really can come to a perception of, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, and it has to change. And the way it changes is within consciousness and within our individual expression. And for myself, that's looked like, having charges for services, also having pay what you feel widely open, doing things for free at times, having things optional, doing things in the moment based on what I intuitively feel with somebody, some exchange, and at the basis of it all, giving more than I take. That's really at the core. Giving more than I take will at least put you in a proper situation. This is the key to abundance. Give more than you take, and the next step from that would be to give without expectation of return, which can be difficult in a human body, but there is a reality to that. Then abundance is given, and abundance is flowing, and abundance is there. So this is at least getting into more of the kind of practicalities of this time. This would be a topic that, again, would be another practice of exploration, which could be a part of a journaling exercise, or just the instilling of this energy now. I feel is probably already relevant for many of you, but it can continue to refine how we're perceiving that. So yeah, I'm just looking at my notes. I had a lot of notes on this one. Just touching on the magic of things, the magic of money, the magic of symbology, the magic of media. As you continue to bring your awareness to what's happening in this time, you'll be able to continue to see the symbolic magic that occurs within our reality. And that's actually an important element to removing this consciousness or these programs within your energy field. Because when you start to understand the geometries or the symbols or the logos that are used in specific circumstances, like with all kinds of things, I'll show you an example in a moment, you can understand how it's affecting potentially you. And then again, awareness is the healer, right? Just having awareness is in a sense enough, because your moment-to-moment life may not bring you to take action on certain things, because that's not your journey, but you may still be affected by it. So I'll just show you something right now, actually, that can be quite relevant in regards to like logos and symbology within the, let's say most of these tools you're going to see is something we basically use all day at some point. So I'm just going to share the screen here. and we'll see the symbols that are used for, just make sure everyone can see this, but these are the symbols that are used for all like the main tools that we use, you know, Google Gmail, Google Chrome, Apple Store, Facebook. And you guys can cross-reference these and go look at them. But these are specific symbols that are used within secret societies, and certain, they're called seals, or they're, you know, just symbolic geometries that are the logos. They are the logos of these systems, or these, you know, corporations, or these tools, and they represent certain crystallized forms of consciousness, like, you know, Freemasonry or these. And, you know, not all of these things are actually negative in themselves, other than, like, you know, Church of Satan and all that, but you know, they are being manipulated. So you can see just like a small example here is quite interesting. The other thing that was actually quite interesting and kind of funny was, one second, I just want to find it. Hopefully I didn't delete it. Basically, it was just a picture of Dr. Fauci wearing the, I can't find it right now, but it was Dr. Fauci wearing the jersey number. He did the opening pitch for the MLB baseball, and baseball, like the Masonic dial is exactly an exact replica of the baseball diamond. And again, baseball in itself is not negative, but it has been used as a Masonic ritual. And so baseball, you know, like the opening pitch of the season was done by Dr. Fauci, and he wore the jersey number 19. Of course, no one said anything about why he was wearing 19, but with COVID-19 being the core of the topic, and the opening pitch being done by the main doctor that is perpetuating all of the varying, I would say, falsehoods about the virus, you're basically seeing a ritual right before your eyes. And this happens often. You know, it happens in Super Bowls and happens all kinds of things. But this would be an example of, you know, the kind of secrets in plain sight kind of thing. And when you're aware of it, you just kind of like laugh at it. It's like a child, you know, doing something stupid. That's pretty much like, you know, what we're seeing play in front of our eyes in a certain sense, right? So yeah, so that's just a side note. I don't want to get too off tangent. But a relevant note at that, because again, as you can start to observe this, then you don't get caught up within it, and you can quickly pull yourself back from being pulled into the emotional waves of situations and trends specifically within consciousness that may be limiting you from just, again, resting back within your consciousness, back within yourself, where you most likely want to reside, you know, and feel safe there. So, you know, we're just touching on a few pieces. Naturally, I'm already seeing that, you know, we will come to a close soon, and I'm likely going to do a second part to this. But, you know, other layers of the manipulation and control that I did want to touch on, which, again, we can go into later, which just simply is on the topic of celebrity or star. The word star, like a celebrity star, is very much indicative of the reverse-based system, because the reverse-based system is based on hierarchy. It's based on the God that is higher. It is based on the illusion that there's inequality within consciousness. And so the celebrity indoctrination that Hollywood has been, and I've talked about this before, but the term Hollywood comes from the term holy wood, and the holy wood was the staff of the magician, of the magical rites of, you know, basically systems of certain orders or societies that, you know, the main individual that basically sourced most of Hollywood was an individual by the name of Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley was the core black magician that instilled much of the programming, among other people, within the Hollywood system. And so Hollywood is the magical kind of grouping of the programming aspect of our consciousness, right? That has to do with music, that has to do with all types of entertainment, music, movies, I don't know what else. I guess that's like the core of them. Music is the biggest one, because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, meaning the first movement of consciousness after light was vibration and sound. So the highest form of manipulation will come through frequency and vibration. And it's also the quickest way to our liberation, right? Is our ability to move our voice. If you guys haven't done the 3-hour Open Your Throat Chakra course, it's free on my website. You can go do it. We worked with the voice and worked with our ability to vibrate our own being so that we can align with those original geometries. You know, mantras are good. Keylontic Science has some great ones. This will all help us realign the geometry and code of our vibratory anatomy. So coming onto that topic of music and movies, but music in particular, that's the one that's most manipulated. And this is a pretty juicy topic as a whole, because as we continue to see like people that we may have admired be revealed as someone who we maybe didn't think was that, or we see a different side, let's say, this can be challenging, of course, because there is a lot of, especially for the mainstream, because in a sense that was their guru. Now we're seeing this in the spiritual scene, like gurus are being uprooted and all, like, you know, of things that may have been lack of integrity or whatever. And, you know, myself as a teacher, I've continued to humble myself to not try and put out a guru vibe, but at the same time recognize it's inevitable at a certain point, you know, if someone looks to me as a teacher. So, you know, I hope to communicate as much as I can that I certainly have been on this path for some time, but I am a part of this journey just as much as you in my own journey. You know, we're all kind of moving at it at different levels. But the deification is a program within our consciousness. So as we uproot that collectively, like we're seeing with the uprooting of certain celebrities, this will reveal the nature of what has been basically going on, you know, within the core of the programming of the star. And because the star is a representation of the reversed star, or the reversed God, you're basically seeing the highest of evil coming from people that you thought were so nice and loving and just, you know, a celebrity or whatever, right? The element with that's generally not discussed, and something that's going to be for another day, but we've already touched on it on certain levels, is that the core of ritualistic abuse, the core of that is for a couple main purposes. The initial purpose is to siphon energy, and the other purpose is to create basically slaves that are under complete and total hypnotic mind control. Because if someone is on complete and controlled mind control, then they can be controlled and they can fulfill an agenda that a normal, regular human being would not ever potentially conceive. Because I believe we're truly love at the core, and any human being who has any ounce of consciousness understands the natural laws of the universe. And as we just simply come back to that, it's so natural. That's why awakening is not really, it is a big deal and it isn't, because it's our natural expression. And because our world is so unnatural, it seems like a big deal. But these are natural, the laws of like the commandments or our true responsibilities as a human are very natural to us. So the ritualistic abuse happens in many different ways. We've touched on a bit of them, but the majority, if not all, because not all celebrities are, like I said, they're not, in my post recently, they're not all pedophiles, they're not all this, they're not all that. And who am I to say anything about them other than what I've intuitively come to explore? What I do know is that the approach to manipulation and control happens on a macro level, like on a micro level of specific stars. There's many different individuals, but when we look at our system as a whole, there are certain placements within that whole that are very important. That would be governmental officials, military generals, doctors, professors, lawyers, celebrities, musicians, judges. Judges is another big one, and military, not just military, but police force. These would be the core main areas where not everyone has to be conditioned or in some crazy like ritualistic abuse. Only the core aspect of the energy of these systems, and those who basically are the core beings who house the decision-making potential of these systems, those are the beings that would have to be focused on. So because we were looking at a history of many, many centuries, the programming and the lineage of these groupings of people has been the same over the course of time. when we look at controlling banking groups like Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and these groups and other groups that are unnamed, that are much more evil, but they wouldn't ever put themselves out there. These families are of specific reptilian and draconian bloodlines that have never changed. They've always been in the same, there's been inbreeding of those same families. And so when you look at certain documentaries and stuff, you'll see this within, you know, certain presidents and government officials all over the world, specifically in the United States, because the United States is connected to Egypt, and most presidents of this time were pharaohs in Egypt, and the bloodline is still the same. So we're looking at a complete connection across the board of beings that have been in this same energy for a very long period of time. So the beings that are at well, what we view to be the top is actually many times the bottom, but like, you know, the core beings that are being uprooted within our collective revealing of this topic in the mainstream, that's just scratching the surface. And much of the COVID and a lot of the other situations are just another division technique to basically distract people from the core of the matter, like the elephant in the room, which in truth is our true history and the separation from our God source. But from that is what we've spoken about, you know, children and all of this. And so the programming that happens from birth with many of these children, which you're seeing with various celebrities, you know, most recently it's like Kanye West or Britney Spears or these people, where you'll see them having what is a very typical psychosis breakdown on the mainstream, where you'll see bipolar tendencies and you'll see all these breakdowns of what's happening, when in reality what's occurring is they're breaking down from their hypnosis. And this has already happened for Kanye, it's already happened for other people before. But there's many layers of control with this. And so when we get to the topic of, you know, the breeding of, like the specific breeding of children or the energetic tracking of specific children before they're even born, to basically prepare them to be induced within this form of control and manipulation. What occurs within this is from the moment that a being is born, they are indoctrinated within a hypnotic world. Everything about reality is created in a world that is untrue. And many times the whole family is connected in this. You know, there's so many layers to it really, and it's just like, it's just mind blowing. But what I really want to get at is that when any sort of abuse happens, and this is where it's most reflective to each of us, and where I feel like this can, the reason why I'm saying this is because this can be very healing when we hear it. Any abuse that occurs when we are a child and when we are a baby, and as I'm saying this, you know, Sarah has her baby in there, it's so beautiful. Any abuse or anything that occurs when we are in the 3 and under age, this is going to imprint within our consciousness potentially for a lifetime. This is the hardest thing to uproot. And so when extreme abuse happens in those age range, what happens is a disconnection from self occurs within the personality, within the brain, within aspects of the psyche that create basically what we call multiple personality disorder, but it's a fractionalized being now. There's basically 2 or more beings within the same being that has basically occurred due to the nature of disassociation. So in shamanism, the healing process of this, we call this actually soul retrieval, where we're retrieving aspects of our soul or our fractured psyche and bringing it back to ourself so that we can become whole again. And coming back to the core of the method we spoke about today, and the method that now, you know, I've just released, it's called the awareness method. You know, I do this one-on-one, and we may do this in group. But it's the method that I have found within myself to support in the varying levels of our healing, which on one layer will be this fractalized aspect of our personality that may have occurred on a micro level, you know, within our human experience, which we can relate with. But occurs on a very intensified level for beings that hold place within our collective matrix consciousness, like a celebrity or a government leader, or, you know, different people like that. And like I said, not all of them are that, and it's now it's much more gray because the consciousness is changing, and so beings who are more awake are now making their way or revealing themselves within these spheres, and everything is starting to equalize. But nonetheless, some of the core individuals that we've come to know and that the deification has been there, we have to pull that deification back. And by pulling that deification back, which happens within our own individual process, that will then inevitably reveal these beings who are truly deeply wounded. And this is something that the reason why I'm sharing this as a whole is first so that you can recognize where this may have occurred in your own experience, because the same programming that's used through hypnosis and NLP and mind programming, subtle programming, subtle layers of pain abuse that occur through just the subtle layers of pain we experience every day from all the things in our reality. This is the same tactic used on the mass scale as it is used on a very intensified scale within what we call the MK Ultra programs, or in other systems like in the military, we call this the super soldier programs, which is basically the ability to make a super soldier, like straight out of a fucking movie or something. And that's done through extreme amounts of ritualistic abuse and all kinds of things. So that as a whole is first and foremost applicable to our own self. And then secondly, it's going to be reflective in how we navigate our healing and how we have compassion for other beings who are facing this. And then specifically, like when we see a celebrity that now we see as doing this, and we're like, wait a minute, now all this anger arises, we're not projecting that anger upon them, because we recognize that the intensity of the pain that a being like that is holding within their psyche is beyond like the wildest of imagination. And this is where, for me personally, I have compassion for people like Donald Trump or whatever, because like the amount of intensity that a person like that is facing day in, day out is like unimaginable, and I don't know too much about his background in regards to that. I know some things, but I won't get into it. It's just like we have to have a certain level of compassion, but there is a certain level of accountability and assertiveness, right? It's like a child. If a child's going to hurt themselves, we have compassion that, oh, they're just a child, they're doing something silly, but then we stop them from like picking up the knife, So this is the responsibility for those that have this awareness, that we don't necessarily need to run with a pitchfork, but this is what's essentially occurring, is that there's a discernment in our ability to call out what is not untrue, especially for those who govern the society we exist in. Or if we no longer want to be a part of that system, then we just check out. And that's like being sovereign and being off grid. But the realities of that are not actually even available. You can't really even do that. So we have to confront. We have to come and say, okay, well, this is untrue and this is not right. And these people need healing, or if they're a soulless being, they will be exterminated. The earth will take care of that. But, there's varying levels to this. So this is a lot. I wrote an article about this. It's on my website, ayp.life. It's called See No Evil. And I speak about my direct experience actually with one of the core kind of satanic witches, which is Mariana Abramovich. She's an artist, and she's an interesting fellow. But I had a certain run-in the astral plane with her, and but I had a certain level of compassion for what I was being revealed in that, and that helped me understand again the layers of manipulation. And again, when we're looking at, for instance, a celebrity who is very like happy and all this on the surface, that in a sense can be one personality of many. So that's where we've been duped, So there's nothing to really get all up on, whatever. But you're recognizing that, in a sense, you're not even dealing with a human being anymore. And so on a practical level, within our immediate reality of our own journey and the people we come across, when we're dealing with trauma, we're dealing with a lack of wholeness. We're dealing with a real deep wound that requires a lot of compassion, such a depth of compassion, because that's the only way the healing is going to be there. And like I mentioned, a mother bear can be very loving and gentle with their cubs and very assertive when something comes in regard to that. So we're not just like love and light hugging demons, but in a sense we are, in a sense we are. And the more we uproot all of this within our being, then we're more and more willing to do that, because we don't see a threat. That's the key. We don't see a threat. We see what is untrue and what is false and what naturally will be dissolved, but not getting caught up in it too much. So So yeah, so I'm just checking Facebook for a moment, and I'm gonna just take a break because again, another key piece here. Um, Yeah, nice. So you can just share in Facebook or anywhere, how you guys are feeling, what's happening. We're gonna wrap it up soon. I'm gonna continue to dive into some like just core pieces here that I feel like will really give some further clarity to all of this. Hopefully, this is doing that now. I hope I'm not bringing too much confusion, especially because I haven't shared much of these types of things in a long time. So it can be kind of like surprising. But I did inform a little bit. But it didn't inform about it all. So I could see where, things could come up. Um, so, we touched on the MK Ultra and the subconscious programming. This happens in many different ways. We looked at some ways in which it happened. Again, I could go hours on all the ways. But at least we've instilled within our consciousness the fact that this is there. And most of us, I feel, already know about this, but it continues to bring us to a clarity that, remember, awareness doesn't mean movement too. So when we're aware of an aspect of darkness, we're not running to that darkness. What do we need to run towards that? We rest where we are, we continue to abide within our being, and we allow for whatever wants to arise to be revealed, and to naturally pass on. Right? That's very important. And that's how we don't get caught up in the plethora of false conspiracies, which inevitably then invalidate much of like what I'm speaking about, because it's just people running around thinking New Earth is coming like on Tuesday. You know what I mean? And all these people are being arrested and all of this. It's like, yeah, on some level that's happening, but life never happens this quickly. Never going to happen as much as the fantasy tale, depicts it. Um, and so we have to be grounded within that. And I won't really get into like those different conspiracies and stuff, but what I will say is that there is an agenda to devalidate conspiracies through conspiracies. You know what I mean? And that happens by way of sharing a bunch of stuff emotionally, a bunch of things that are just like all these kind of fantasy tales of things that are going on, which to be fair, much of what I'm speaking to can very much be a fantasy for most. So I acknowledge that. And because we're speaking about dualistic topics here, there is room for error. I have to come to my own humility with that. There's room for error with anything I'm speaking to in regards to the exact detail of this or that. However, the energy speaks for itself, and I can um, I can't put my my faith in what I'm saying, at least, because it's been so long, just exploring all these things, within my own being. So to really come into the core of it all, at least for like where we're coming from, where we're moving on from here. We've already gone into some core practices, which, this is recorded at least on Facebook, so I will upload it. You'll be able to rewatch. You go on my website, and I mean, all of you already have a lot of practices, but I will say double down on whatever is working for you. This is one thing, double down on whatever is working for you. Put more attention on the things that do feel most natural. Like when we look at a human design system, like, and I do a reading with someone, the majority of our decision-making authority, which is our inner authority, is going to be in the body for the most part. Some will have mental projection or no authority, but the majority of the time it's going to be in the body. And regardless of any of that, what feels most natural and most at ease, right? Like the thing we know most deeply, that's going to be what's of easiest to navigate. I use the example of going to the bathroom because it's the most like visceral. It's like, well, if I have to go to the bathroom, I get up, I go to the bathroom. There's no real discussion. It's not this big confusing thing. It just naturally arises. So in regards to the plethora of topics within our reality of our moment to moment life, we have to continue to come back to, what do I feel I know? And whatever else, it's in a sense we forget about, because those things are not necessarily going to be either there for you at the at that time, like necessary for you to explore, or are they going to be even relevant to your experience at all? And that can be the case with what we're sharing today. Or potentially something arisen for you tonight and then it's gone and you don't ever have to explore it again. And that's the point I'm getting at. So when we look at our human design authority, and if we have an authority that's in the body, it's going to be very much an experience of recognizing, how do we listen to the body that knows? like the body that knows the way, right? Like in my own personal experience, at any point in which I'm experiencing any level of confusion as to like, well, what I want to do today, or what should I decide upon with this or that, whatever. If because I have open head centers, my head really goes, and I really get into the questions at times. Much less now, but if it still happens. So if I'm aware of it, I simply recognize that this is just not the time for me to explore that. What am I sure about? And then I'm sure about, like, I just want to go sit on the couch and pet my dog. I want to go outside. I want to go drink some juice. I want to look at the sun. I want to go write. I am sure about that. So this is all we really need to focus on, because then life will take you down the rabbit hole of whatever you are sure about and continue to unlock potentially what you were unsure about at a later time. And this is a real practical way to just look at the human design system as a whole. And if you haven't explored this, it's endlessly important to potentially do that. Astrology can help with that, but I found it has been more helpful for me in that regard. But human design aside, we do all have the ability to tune to our body and use that as a practice, especially when the flaming fire of topics and trends and emotional situations arise through the ether right now. That may require you to really have to make a decision. But the only way you're going to be able to make that decision from a clear place is by coming back to what you do know, not what you believe in or what you think is right or what your opinion is or all that, what you do know and how you feel with that knowing. So yeah, this is where we come back to where we started today. Again, I'm just reviewing some notes here as we come back into this, and we can start to settle into this. Maybe we've gone into some things and we have taken you down the rabbit hole. But we're settled here and we're settled in ourselves. And again, what do I know for certain? What really lights me up, what really makes me feel okay in these times, like in the practices, in my relationships, in my moment to moment life? What really can I put my energy into that will feel most of service to my friends, my family, those around me, whatever level of responsibility, you're willing to take or you're being given? These are the questions that we can really continue to come back to as we navigate all of these topics, because that's really what's going to matter most. Us knowing about some of the topics we've explored today is only going to be as relevant as your higher self, your intuition, your natural unfolding reality reveals the actions that you're meant to take with that wisdom and that knowledge, right? Which may be very little at all. It's just the knowing of that is enough. And because we're human beings, not human doings, the essence of being is our first and foremost priority, right? Like I had this image once, and it's coming to me again now, so I'll share it. When I was exploring the topics of our higher dimensional Earth, some people call this inner Earth. There's many terms, Agora, Aurora, fifth dimensional Gaia, many terms. But when we were the topic was basically the higher dimensional version of our consciousness that had much larger beings, like 9 feet tall, in a place that was always sunny. So it had a central sun that was always lit up. And the worlds in there were just so magical, and everything was extremely beautiful. The cities, the nature, everything was so lush and vibrant and alive. And the message of the person who had visited there, who had got the image, was of these great beings in these beautiful robes or something, and they were just lying around, lounging in nature, just chilling, just engaging, cuddling, talking, exploring, mainly telepathically at that point. But there was much less of the activity that we think the human experience is. If I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do surf in this way, I got to whatever it may be. It was just a perfect image, and I'm receiving this image now. It's been years, actually, probably about 6 years since I've gone into that, but I've received that image a couple of times, and it continues to reiterate and confirm, at least in my reality, when I'm sitting around for an hour just looking at my dog, that this is very much our natural expression. It is our natural self, to exist in being and as being. And nothing more, nothing less, this is it. So especially in a time where it may feel like we got to do all these things and prepare all in these ways or get our shit together, that may be the case, and we will be guided to the things we physically are to act upon in our more masculine oriented way, but we're always balancing back to the essence of being, which still is a masculine action. It's like sitting around is an action, meditating is an action, speaking with a friend for hours is an action, doing what we're doing tonight is an action. And it's likely far more efficient than some other actions that we've done, maybe even today, even myself, you know, like, I don't know. Like, so, you know, we just come back to that, at least the humbling with ourselves. So before I get into anything else, which I don't even know if I will, I'm just going to open up to questions, comments as like a wrap up, because we're 2.5 hours now, longest session we've done in a while. But we're all still here, so it's a good sign. I mean, not everyone's on screen, so maybe people are, you know, asleep, but we're here. So yeah, questions, comments, any other things you'd like me to further clarify? Most importantly, how are we feeling? You know, as most know, I don't usually like to end these if there isn't a resolution, if we don't feel a certain sense of completion, you know, within this. Someone's asking, can I speak to dragon energy? Yeah, I can do that in a moment. Actually, I'll just speak to it. So when we speak to dragon energy, there are certain races of dragons that are of positive nature. There's certain dragon races that are of negative nature. You know, for instance, off the top of my head, I know that I think it's the white and red dragons that are of more negative oriented nature. So if they pop up in your sphere or whatever, just basically tell them to go away. There's nothing you need to do. You know, if basically any being or any energy, especially as you start to explore more multidimensional realities, any being that comes to you unannounced, I would lend on the side of telling to leave or not come unannounced, at least, because that's a it's like coming into someone's personal space without telling them. That just doesn't happen. You don't do that. And we definitely don't do that in social distancing time, you know. So within the astral plane and in regards to the other beings, if anything happens in that regard, that's something to be questioned and something to be assertively asked to, you know, not do and remain away. And this can and certainly happen in regards to dragon energy, and especially those purple dragons. I believe the blue dragon race are of more benevolent nature. Some may feel connected to those race lines. You may even have them in your dreams or energies or memories that come up. That's a very vast topic that I won't get into tonight, but just to point out at least that, you know, not it's the same with Anunnaki reptilians. Not all of those beings are of negative orientation. Some of us may have race DNA encoding of those race lines that we're healing now, or we've incarnated to heal. That's very much, you know, part of the game. Everyone's given the opportunity to heal right now. All beings, everything's coming to the surface. So we can't rule anything out, but we have to be discerning. You mentioned something about Lyra, fall of Lyra. I'm switching from Facebook to Zoom. Yeah, the fall of Lyra was basically the original fall of this universe in the 11.5 dimension. I don't know the timeline on that. It's in the Voyager's 2 book in the Kalantic Science System that could be explored, but that is the original disconnection from source. And that occurred in kind of fractal or holographic form in Atlantis times. Well, the original Raceline times in Antarctica, in Atlantis and Lemuria, in the fall of Babylon and Rome. But you can see that none of these factions ever truly fell. They still kept their control. So that's the key. We exist still in Rome. All roads do lead to Rome. We have to understand this. It's still a reality. All roads do lead to Rome, because Rome is the core of where most of this, at least on this planet, is there. Nice. So Rami's feeling drained. I mean, yeah, I can imagine. We've been going for 2.5 hours or 3 hours. If you've been here, I feel like as a topic overall, though, people feeling drained is a common theme, feeling more tired, wanting to sleep more. Give yourself that time, giving yourself that space. That's a very beautiful thing to do. Don't think sleeping is whatever. I mean, you can be lethargic, but, you know, or, you know, go too much into sleep, but just give yourself the space to rest. The resting is going to be very vital in coming times, especially in this lull period that we're in. Yeah, you see the relevance. Yeah. So, like I said, people can get into a lot more details in regards to some of these topics. Feeling emotional. Yep, I feel that. I'm processing past life material. So, yes, naturally, this will come up, especially when we talk to things like this. Yeah, it's beautiful. Anna, thanks for sharing. Okay, so I'm seeing comments still come in, but I do want to just like bring us back in and really, just bring us back to the heart, at least for kind of a completion here. So if you still have questions and things you want to share, please do, and I will get to them, or maybe in the second session, the follow up. Yeah, nice. Yeah, indigo conversations. Yep. We won't get into that today. We'll get into another session, but there's many different indigo contracts and stuff like that you can get into and just explore. It's sometimes relevant, sometimes not. In my experience, it's been helpful to understand. Okay. So we're just going to come into ourselves for a moment. Someone saying the frequency is nourishing. Yes, let's nourish ourselves by ourselves. Someone asked the question, "Who are you?" Maybe they're pointing to who am I as a person, but I'm going to take it as who am I at the core of being. And this could be the question we sink into just for a moment as we close our eyes and just bring our attention there. And we disconnect from everything that we've talked about, just come back to ourselves, come back to the core of our being, and maybe pose that question, who am I? What is here? What is present? We can rest into the center of the chest towards the back of the heart and feel into whatever's arising there. Bring our loving, compassionate attention to any energy that arises within ourselves that requires that attention. And simply find ourselves coming to rest within ourself, within our being. So as we feel a sense of natural ease within ourself, we can move that attention through our body, through our being, just explore that energy. Whatever else feels most relevant to you. I mean, each of you can navigate this as you feel called. And as you feel a sense of completion, we can bring ourselves back, open the eyes, whatever that looks like. Much gratitude in the air within myself, at least, and what I'm seeing with all of you. Just a gratitude to be able to share this space with all of you in an open way. Yeah, we certainly went through quite a lot, with still quite a much more relevant topics that I did not touch on, but navigated by our collective energy in this space. I feel like we got to what was most relevant, most important, at least for this session. I'm feeling it's likely we're going to do another one in the coming weeks. I'm not sure when yet. Likely around the Lionsgate 8/8 in August. That will likely be when the next one will be, maybe before. For those that are still with us, we'll just cover on some like reflecting topics and just close out. But there are some things I just want to, point out here. Firstly, well, just as a side note, if you do want to share this on Facebook, please do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it up on Facebook. I don't even know if it'll stay up on Facebook, to be honest, but I will certainly get the recording off. And then it'll be up on my YouTube. And then if it doesn't last there, we'll figure out a way. But I think we're good enough. I'm not that big, so they're not going to target me as much as they would some other people in regards to that type of thing, especially in regards to some of the, very polarizing topics. It's difficult to polarize love, but as soon as you get into other things, it's very easy to get distracted with that. But hopefully as we navigate this, we're able to hold a certain balance, as we explore some of these things. I would encourage you to, again, continue to recognize the importance of the true practices that you have within your own immediate sphere before exploring more of these topics that potentially the mind is wanting to get you into or whatever. It's all relevant and it all can be helpful. Though it's best to have a strong foundation, as we're navigating, and it's why I've taken so long to share some of these things. And because of the nature of me sharing to a generalized audience, I can't always, make it as specific to each person. So that's where it can be challenging, and so I empathize with that. In regards to your own path. So I do encourage, connect with me one-on-one if you feel the call. There's many other resources out there. I'm going to put together a document in regards to the resources I spoke about today, at least some of them, and just summarize the ones that are in this chat. So you'll have access to that. You can go to ayp.life. All the rest of the resources are going to be there. But the coming times will naturally reveal everything more of who we are, and it will reveal more of everything I'm speaking to and beyond. And we're all in this together, but we are in different boats. And it's important to understand that, because we are not to fall into any generalized perspective, even the teachings I'm putting out, which can be still very specific, but they have to be navigated through your own heart. And you are, in a sense, your own teacher in that respect. And teachers may also still then pop up in your life, like I may be in a certain regard. So we have to have a balance with that, so we continue to walk humbly and grounded, just be grounded in where we're actually at. And in regards to potential challenges that we may continue to face, furthering the grounding, because that will be of most importance. If we feel grounded, if we're super centered, as we kind of explored, we will be given what we need, when we need it, how we need it, by who we need it from, and potentially where we are to get it, at least in our physical coordinates. So all of that is going to be eternally relevant. And yeah, so with that, I feel we're coming to our close here. We'll just double check in the chat. Yep, Facebook is lit up with things, so it's always fun. No trolls, so we're good. Where's the chat box here? Yeah, everything is there. Like Sarah said, she left us. She had her son or daughter, though. Like she said, doing the spiritual work first before we navigate. I think it's kind of chicken before the egg a little bit. It's not to say one is better than the other. For me, some of these topics came like before any sort of sincere, authentic spiritual practice. But that, in a sense, gave me the fuel to really navigate and be like, I'd rather die than exist in this system. So I'm gonna do what I can to find the truth, you know. But then there's other teachers, like recently, even my teachers, Ramaji and Ananda, they're in many ways just coming into some of these things and sharing about them, but yet they hold a true non-dual force. So there's so many different layers to that, and we have to, again, not deify, right? Or and not get in the comparison game, because just because someone holds a certain energy of spiritual nature doesn't mean they are lacking in another respect, within the dimension, within the non-linear aspect of our awakening. So that can help ground us when we're listening to messages, because it isn't a linear journey. As much as it isn't. So I felt like that's been very helpful in my journey, especially as I navigated, you know, all the teachers and all the things. You know? Yeah. All right. So yeah, this is great. I love each and every one of you. It's been wonderful to share space here. If anyone wants to actually come on Zoom and share anything, you're welcome to. But I'll probably just wrap it up. You can just say so in the comments. But you know, 3 hours, so we're good. Go share this on Facebook if you're on Zoom, for as long as it's up. Like I said, I'll get all the resources ready for you guys next couple days or whatever, and continue the dive. You know, continue the deep dive. We're really rolling it. So yeah, that's it. Love you guys. This has been fun. Yeah, blessings to all of you, and enjoy your night, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. See you soon. Peace.